The Elemental Wizard of Hogwarts Chapter 41-60. Chapter 41-Breaking Through. At this time, Seal had begun to regret it. He had nothing to do with Dumbledore's savior development plan. Now, he forgot Professor Flitwick's key level. Seal couldn't help complaining in his heart. Professor Flitwick was fine. Why did he turn the key into insect wings? The flying insects were almost the dead end of Seal. Seal followed behind the three of them, and continued to move forward tremblingly. After a few people passed through a long dark corridor, the sound of the wings vibrating became louder and louder. Room. Countless keys soar in the sky in flocks flapping their wings. Opposite them were several broomsticks leaning on the wall, next to a huge door. At this time, Seal was already shaking. Hermione and Ron helped Seal helplessly. When poor Seal saw the key flying in the sky, he began to tremble and refused to take a step forward. He even took out his wand and prepared to give the key flying in the sky a big shot. "Hey, I didn't expect that, Seal, you would be afraid of flying insects," Ron teased, and Seal, who usually seems to be fearless, also has such a side. "Damn Ron, you waited for me to go back, and you turned into a spider in your bed every day." Charles was not polite and retorted firmly. Seal held his wand tremblingly and pointed at the door. "Ah, the Ola hole is open." Obviously, the door did not open because of Seal's fear. Fawkes had already flown into Hermione's arms when Seal began to tremble. He felt that he had definitely given away all the eyes of his life. Who would have thought that the only person in this world who had a chance to break the rules would be afraid of bugs? Cowardly. Well, it looks like the professors definitely thought of a spell to open the door, and I think we might need a key. I see, a big old key. Hermione looked at the door lock, frowned and analyzed, occasionally helping Seal, who was shaking into a sieve. "Come on, Harry, if Snape can grab the right key on an old broom, then you'll be fine as the youngest seeker Gryffindor has ever seen." Ron watched as Harry kept going. Of encouragement. Harry looked at Ron, and Seal leaning against the door feebly, and Hermione supporting Seal. After thinking about it, he resolutely grabbed the old broom in front of him. The moment Harry grabbed the broom, the keys that were flying freely in the sky seemed to have transformed in an instant, and began to fly to Harry's side constantly to harass Harry. The three of them stood on the ground at a loss. "Well, it's not easy this time," Ron complained, and Charles trembled even more. Harry rode on a broom and flew hard under the constant harassment of other keys, constantly avoiding the harassment of the keys. Finally, Harry found the ancient, big key that Hermione said in the group of keys. Of course, the main reason Harry was sure it was the key was because the key's wings were obviously injured, and it flew weakly. Harry leaned down and pulled up his broom quickly, successfully grabbing the key after a nice cobra maneuver. Harry dived hastily, and threw the key in his hand to Ron, who was still idling. Ron also played very well. He jumped up and caught the key, and hurried to open the door. After a while in a hurry, Ron successfully opened the door. Then he and Hermione rushed in with Shire on his back, not forgetting to turn around and yell at Harry, "Come on, close the door." Harry heard Ron's shouts, and stopped dealing with the keys. He took a good look at the timing and flew into the door on a broomstick in a dive. Ron saw Harry fly in, and hurriedly left Seal to slam the door to death. After a bang, a few people leaned against the wall in fear and rested for a while. The Harry trio were amazed at the power of the key later. If Ron hadn't shrewdly shut the door, one of the people present would have been injured. Seal was not afraid of keys. What he was afraid of were bugs with wings. The dense group of keys in the sky really made it impossible for Seal to walk. Everyone leaned against the wall for a while, and Ron seemed to be the first to recover. Looking at Seal, he couldn't help but tease. "Hey, Seal, I didn't know you were so afraid of bugs. I'll catch a few for you to practice gallbladder when I have time." "I swear, Ron, if you dare to do this, there will be a giant spider sleeping with you in your quilt every day. I'm definitely not kidding." Seal responded viciously. Harry and Hermione rolled their eyes as they listened. The two were obviously playing a story where the elder brother laughed at the second brother. The funny thing is that these two people are still having fun, which is very sand sculpture. After a few people rested, they all returned to their previous appearances. Even Seal, who had been shaken into a sieve just now, felt full of energy at this time. Several people continued to walk forward, walked along the dark corridor for a while, and several people came to a huge room with various statues. When the last Hermione stepped into the room, the door behind Hermione slammed shut automatically, and then the torches on the wall began to light one by one. It looks like a game of chess is coming. Charles looked at the arrangement in front of him, whistled, and then bowed to Ron, expressing your invitation. Of course Ron was not polite, and immediately climbed to the position of the knight. Looking at Harry and Hermione, still standing there, he quickly said to Harry and Hermione, "Harry, you go to the bishop's seat, Hermione, you go to the rear wing position." Then what about Seal? There are only 3 positions. Hermione was a little anxious, looking at Seal who was still standing by. "Don't worry about me, I have a way to get there. Ron, concentrate on the game." Seal shook his head indifferently, took the phoenix from Hermione's arms, and then silently retreated to the back with the phoenix in his arms. "Hey Fox, can you take me to the next room? How about a month's worth of dried fish?" Charles hugged Fox and began to haggle. "That's right, our great Shire saltfish Lapin Lancaster decided to use Fox to fast forward straight." "No way." Looking at Professor McGonagall's arrangement, you know that old Deng's plan is still prepared for Harry, and he can't destroy this sacrificial teaching. Finally, after one person and one bird agreed on the price, Fox let out a long cry and disappeared in place with Seal in an instant. Of course, Fox's long cry startled the trio who were concentrating on their duel. When they turned around, they saw Seal beckoning to them with a smile, and then disappeared into the flames with Fox. Harry and Ron were a little dumbfounded. They didn't know what was going on and looked at Hermione blankly. "Charles, he should be all right?" Harry asked uncertainly. Hermione was also sluggish for a few seconds, then suddenly realized, followed by a strange expression. "It's okay, Seal should have been taken away by Phoenix. Phoenix has the ability to teleport. If nothing else, Seal should have asked Fox for help." After Hermione finished speaking, Harry and Ron both had Spartan expressions on their faces. "Damn Seal, why don't you take us with you?" At this time, the two of them were extremely unified in their thoughts. "Focus, Ron, Seal should have seen something. Focus on Ron," Hermione reminded Ron. Well, Ron agreed in his heart, then shook his head and began to concentrate on the chess game. Chapter 42-Breakthrough. Fox was still very interesting. He took Seal directly to Snape's level. Looking at the potion on the table, Shalva glanced at the little potion left, and Seal knew that Voldemort or said Quirrell had gone in. After a rough estimate, Seal found that the potion that could pass through the flames was actually for 2 people. In an instant, Charles knew what Dumbledore meant. Definitely want to let Charles also face Voldemort to give Harry a layer of insurance. "Damn old bee, this can be counted." Charles whispered for a while, and patted Fox. "Fox, I have to trouble you to go to Headmaster Dumbledore and bring him here. I think Harry and I are hard enough to keep Voldemort. Be quick, please." Fox looked at Seal's serious face, and stopped being naughty with Seal, instantly turning into flames and disappearing in place. Seal took out his wand and held it in his hand, sat down on the ground, and began to meditate to recover his magic power, and at the same time, he was constantly reviewing the magic spell he had learned. Finally, I don't know how long I waited, the door behind Seal was pushed open, Hermione and Harry rushed in disheartened, and then the two hurriedly closed the door. "Charles, damn, you actually let Fox take you away." Harry angrily looked at Charles sitting on the ground. Ron's injury made Harry very uncomfortable, and even Hermione looked at Seal angrily. "Calm down you two, believe it or not, you can pass the first few levels without me at all. Fox initially planned to bring me here to wait for you, but I refused." Charles looked at the two people's mood as not very good, and quickly began to fool. "Really?" Hermione was dubious. Harry also looked at Seal in disbelief. Of course, don't worry about Ron. I have already told Fox to inform Professor Dumbledore. I believe there will be a result soon. Seal hurriedly continued to fool the two of them to stabilize the result. Okay. Although the expressions of the two are still a little suspicious, they can't be entangled so much now. Hermione began to hurriedly read the hint of this level. Danger is ahead, safety is behind. There are two of us who can help you. Drink them, one will lead you forward, the other will send you back to where you came from. Both contained nettle wine. 3 are killers, waiting in line. Choose, unless you wish to procrastinate here forever. We also provide 4 clues to help you choose. First, no matter how cunningly the poisons hide, they stand to the left of the nettle wine. Second, the contents of the bottles at the left and right ends are not well rounded. None of them will work for you if you want to move forward. Third, you will find that the bottles vary in size. There is no death hidden among giants and gnomes. Fourth, the second on the left and the second on the right, although the appearance is different, the taste is the same. Seeing Hermione racking her brains thinking, Harry looked at Hermione with a bewildered look on the side. Seal really wanted to directly say that the one who drank the least was Hermione and her 2 useless men. Finally Hermione seemed to understand. The third Harry, the third is the antidote, you can move on. Hermione was very happy to solve the puzzle by herself. This kind of logic analysis is really good for pure-blood wizards. Absolutely fatal. When Harry heard Hermione's words, he picked up the potion on the table and was about to drink it, but was stopped by Seal. Wait, Harry, are you going to drink it all and face the enemy alone? Seal looked at Harry seriously. Harry looked Seal in the eyes, and he swore he had never seen Seal so serious. Yes, Seal, you can go back with Hermione to take care of Ron. This is my destiny, I have to face it alone, and this is only a small bottle. Harry looked at the serious Seal with a still expression on his face. The worried Hermione smiled happily, and answered gently. To be honest, Harry didn't want his friends to risk his life with him. No Harry, you're only in the first year, you can't beat the professor. Hermione was very worried and discouraged Harry, and she didn't want to lose her friend. Hearing this, Seal revealed a very happy expression. Stopping Harry, who wanted to take another breath, and said to Hermione, Hermione, go back and take care of Ron first, and meet the professor by the way. Don't worry, I will take care of Harry. After speaking, she kept winking at Hermione, and the smart Hermione understood what Seal meant in an instant. She believed in Seal, even if Seal knew a lot of things she didn't understand behind her back, she was still very happy. Believe in Seal, she understands that Seal will explain the situation to her one by one at a certain time. So Hermione no longer hesitated, grabbed the potion on the table for the return trip, took a gulp, turned around, rushed into the flames, and ran back. Okay, Harry, it's just the 2 of us left, there are some things I need you to know. Seal pulled Harry down and took a bottle of non-toxic nettle wine from the table and took a sip. Harry looked at Seal with a puzzled expression, he didn't know what Seal knew and had to tell him now. I'm going, this thing is really bitter, don't look at me like that, this is a fortification drink, do you need some? Charles replied looking at Harry who looked puzzled. Harry shook his head again and again when he heard that it was wine. He wasn't old enough for wine, but he didn't dare to be like Seal. Well, where do we start? Charles looked at Harry and began to say slowly. Harry, do you know what you face when you walk past the flames? Charles began to ask. Harry nodded. Yes, Snape or Voldemort. Harry replied seriously. He didn't understand what Seal was doing. Yes, Harry, a professor or a mysterious person. Seal continued Harry's words and looked at Harry very seriously. Harry, the person behind this flame is probably a mysterious person. You know I played against him in the Forbidden Forest. He is very strong, even if he is extremely weak now. He is still very strong. I tried my best and still almost got killed by him. Quote. Harry swallowed and looked at Seal nervously. Are you ready to face him? Even if the final outcome is death? Harry, have you made up your mind? Seal asked seriously. Yes, this is my fate, Shire. Harry's answer was still firm. Seal suddenly laughed, smiling happily. Great answer to Harry, then I'll tell you a way to beat him. What? Harry was amazed. Don't be so surprised, Harry, you've beaten him once, so it's not that hard to beat him a second time. Charles replied with a smile, you just need to touch him. Harry, your mother is great. She used maternal love to build the strongest defensive magic for you, which made Voldemort bounce back from his own death curse 11 years ago, and also made him absolutely unable to touch you until you were an adult. Seal smiled and looked at Harry, who was surprised and touched, and then said, don't worry about the other Harry, believe me, you can definitely beat him, and, after so long, don't you find you as the potion in hand for two. I'll help you, don't worry Harry. Harry looked at Seal in front of him with some emotion, stood up and hugged Seal gently, and then, as if infected by Seal, took a sip of the wine bottle in Seal's hand with a majestic expression on his face. Then a mask of pain appeared on his face. This stuff is really bitter and spicy. Chapter 43-Decisive Battle. After briefly discussing tactics with Harry, Harry took a small sip of the potion and handed the remaining potion to Seal with a heroic expression on his face. After Seal took the potion, Harry turned around and rushed into the flames. Seal took the potion and watched Harry disappear into the raging fire. He sighed, I hope everything goes well, don't be there, what the hell are you doing? Shaw felt extremely tired. The original plot was good, but with his participation, the details and everything changed. Seal also thought about ignoring the trio, but when he thought of Hermione, Seal was still worried. But as long as Seal participates, some details of the plot will inevitably change. The hallway chase on Halloween and the battle in the Forbidden Forest make Seal feel terrified. Seal shook his head, cleared out some unrealistic thoughts, and moved his wand above his head, elemental surround. Some 4-colored light spots flew out from Seal's wand and began to fly around Seal. Among them, the khaki light spots were the brightest, followed by the fiery red light spots. This is a small magic created by Charles himself, referring to the principle of elemental magic in Hufflepuff's magic book. Calculate the time, it should be almost. Seal muttered, and then drank the potion in his hand. Seal instantly felt as if he was in an ice cellar, with no temperature on his body. Damn, this thing is cold and bitter. Seal muttered with a mask of pain on his face, then squeezed his wand and took a deep breath, before rushing towards the flames. The words were divided. Harry, who had just rushed through the flames, raised his wand and was sent flying. When Harry saw the person in front of him, he couldn't believe his eyes. It was Quirrell, the one Harry always thought. It's Professor Quirrell from the Justice Camp. Seeing Harry's surprised expression, Quirrell smiled happily. I didn't expect it to be me. Yeah, who would suspect a poor, stammering, weak professor? After finishing speaking, Quirrell waved his wand, conjured a rope, and instantly tied Harry, who hadn't reacted, into a dumpling. Then he ignored Harry and began to study how to get the Philosopher's Stone. For him, time is limited. Harry was instantly anxious when he saw him turn around and continue his research. He shouted loudly, it's you. I always thought it was Professor Snape. Damn it, let me go. Quirrell didn't look back, but responded to Harry, yeah, Snape, that cold, heartless guy who looks like a giant bat. Ha 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 ha, you should really doubt him. FXXX, what the hell is going on here? My lord, please help me, I'm running out of time. Quirrell was a little exasperated. Boy, use that boy. A hoarse, low voice sounded, and the first reaction of the voice was the hissing of snakes, which made Harry feel creepy. As soon as the voice sounded, Harry's head began to hurt again, especially the scar, like a small branding iron. Come here, Harry, we're running out of time. Quirrell waved his wand and released the rope from Harry's body. Harry observed the situation and walked to the magic mirror obediently. Harry in the magic mirror, accompanied by his parents, mischievously showed the Philosopher's Stone in his left pocket, and then put it back again. For a moment, Harry felt as if something had fallen from his pocket. What did you see? Quirrell asked Harry in a hurry, I saw that I won the Quidditch World Cup, and Dumbledore personally awarded me the award. Harry bit his head and flickered. He's lying. He's lying. Let me. The hoarse voice came again, and Harry got goosebumps. But, Master, you're still weak. Damn seal, Master. Quirrell stuttered and looked scared. I still have this strength, and I'll get the Philosopher's Stone soon, don't worry. Quirrell was interrupted by a hoarse voice. Quirrell had no choice but to take off his turban and turn his back. Harry was completely stunned at this point. Quirrell actually had a human face in the place where the back of his head should have been. Harry Potter. Definitely not a typo. Long time no see. Look at me now, lost my body, and become like a shadow and smoke. I have to rely on someone else's body to exist, and it can't even be called alive. Voldemort. Harry called the disfigured master at a glance. Yes, since you know it's me, why don't you give me the Philosopher's Stone? Voldemort looked at Harry, his voice dry and hoarse. Don't even think about it, goddamn Voldemort. Harry clutched his left trouser pocket for a moment. If it weren't for that damn boy, Pot, you couldn't have stood here talking to me. Voldemort looked a little exasperated and pointed his wand at Harry. Are you talking about me? The grip of the Iron Giant. Ciel's voice came just right. Voldemort and Harry were startled by the intruding sound, but before Voldemort could react, a giant hand made of steel appeared from the ground, and in an instant held Voldemort, who was still stunned. This is Ciel's masterpiece combined with transfiguration, forcibly turning the earth element magic of Giant's grip into steel in order to increase its strength. Of course, the result of the change is that the consumption of magic power is even greater. Voldemort is also a veteran dark wizard. At the moment when the giant hand folded, he forcibly controlled Quirrell's body, making all kinds of joints reverse, completely ignoring Quirrell's screams, and burst out with huge magic power and began to resist the giant hand. Ciel held his wand in both hands, struggling to keep the magic of the giant's grip from being washed away by Voldemort. He yelled at Harry, who was still stunned. Come on, touch his face. The mana was quickly consumed, and the blue veins on Ciel's neck appeared, and fine sweat slowly covered Ciel's cheeks. Harry's award was not polite. Voldemort still struggling. Ah! Voldemort and Quirrell. Harry screamed at the same time. At this time, Harry's body seemed to be transformed into a red-hot iron, and black smoke began to come out of the place where it touched, and it started to continue. Become fly ash. Harry, come on, I can't hold it anymore. Ciel yelled, and Harry, too, endured the pain, and slapped Quirrell on the face. Quirrell's scream became louder, and his face began to turn into ashes. Voldemort looked at Charles with a malicious look. It's you again. It's you again, Charles Lancaster. Before the words fell, the whole person became a lump of mentality like sand. Seeing this, Harry jumped back. The giant steel hand lost its resistance, slammed it together, and directly crushed the object named Quirrell. Voldemort. Chapter 44-Bewitched. After Quirrell turned to ashes, both Harry and Ciel breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, the biggest hidden danger was finally resolved. Harry looked at Ciel with a triumphant smile on his face. But Harry didn't see Ciel's smile. Instead, he saw the panic that immediately appeared on Ciel's face after he relaxed. Harry hurriedly turned his head and saw the skeleton composed of black smoke and shadows, which passed through Harry in an instant. Chest. Harry! Ciel exclaimed, and Harry fell down in response. Ciel didn't have time to think about turning around and started running. While running, he began to condense the earth elements around him. Thanks to Loudang for the room he chose. I don't know if it was intentional or just like this. The room where the magic mirror was placed was extremely strong with earth elements. After a while, Ciel prepared the elements. Flying birds flock, change. Ciel roared out the curse, and countless earth cones began to fly back. Under the intensive attack, the black smoke was washed away. Ciel stopped and leaned against the wall, holding his wand, gasping for breath. He was exhausted but still did not dare to relax at all. There were still a considerable number of soil cones floating around him. Slowly, The smoke began to appear again, and Seal stared at the smoke with extreme tension. He swore that if the smoke continued to pursue him, he would fight with all his might. Who knows if this smoke Voldemort would cause harm to himself, Lao Fu's evil. Soul magic is scary. Charles Lancaster. The smoke had not yet formed, but a voice came out through the smoke. Seal looked at the slowly forming smoke in surprise. He was so surprised that this smoke could speak. This is not scientific at all. The original didn't say it, it's too magical. Although surprised, Seal did not answer. The smoke formed a pedestrian walk. It was Voldemort, and with the help of unknown black magic, Voldemort seemed to be alive and alive. This should be our second fight, right? Voldemort acted very gracefully, even standing there, like a standard noble, who didn't mind the earth cone floating around Seal and the wand that Seal pointed at him. Seal didn't answer Voldemort, he just stared at him like that. Seal didn't know what kind of bad thoughts Voldemort had at this time. In the original book, he should just fly away and fly back to the Black Forest where he met Wormtail. Voldemort didn't mind either, and continued gracefully, talented, tenacious, and even mastered the elemental magic I didn't get. That's great, Seal. Voldemort moved for a moment, and Voldemort at this time did not look like the murderous demon at all. But what I don't understand is why are you so absorbed in working for that old bee? After Voldemort finished speaking, he raised his head and stared at Seal, watching Seal holding his wand nervously, and suddenly laughed, laughing wildly. Put down your wand, Seal, you can't do me any harm right now, and I can't do you any harm either. Look at me now, my body is made of smoke and shadows, wandering between life and death on the edge of it. It is my best effort to be able to speak out like this. Quote. Seal ignored him. At this time, Seal was also a little confused. He didn't know what Voldemort was going to do. Oh, no, I can't do any damage to you, but you can, Avada Sombra. Yes, it's a very useful spell, it can wipe out the enemy in an instant. Voldemort became more and more mad, and the alarm bell in Charles's heart rang loudly. Staring at Voldemort. Let me guess, you don't really want to die for that old bee. From the troll to the Forbidden Forest, I can feel that you are very tired, Seal, so why are you trying so hard? Money, status, friendship. It seems, ridiculous friendship. Voldemort began to move back and forth, but the smoke eyes were still fixed on Seal, their eyes full of mockery. I think about it, Harry. No, Seal, you're a selfish person like me, and you're not going to work so hard for a little boy you've only met so long. So what's that little girl? Let me think about it. Hermione. No, I thought, Hermione Granger. A clever little girl. When Voldemort called Hermione's name in advance, Seal burst into flames, and countless mounds began to hit Voldemort, breaking him up again and again. Never allow you to mention her name. Seal roared, the expression on his face beginning to turn hideous. Seal was so angry that he would never allow someone he cared about to be threatened. Voldemort didn't care that he was being beaten by the earth cones, and they scattered and gathered again and again, and the voice was full of bewitching. I said, Charles, you can't do me any harm, don't bother, ha 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 ha. Voldemort smiled happily, as if he saw something funny. Ignoring Seal's attack, he started to walk around Seal like a walk. It seems that you are a person who values love and righteousness. It just so happens that I also know one, but it doesn't matter, Charles, you know, I have a prophecy with the boy lying on the ground over there. In the near future it will definitely come back. What will you do then? What will your little girlfriend do? Voldemort looked at Seal without changing his expression. His face was full of arrogance, as if Seal was a tiny bug. Oh, I almost forgot. If I remember correctly, your parents and hers are stinky muggles. That's not good. Originally I wanted you to be my servant. Now it seems, no all too likely, your muggle parents and you two mudbloods are nothing more than vehicles for our own amusement. Seal was almost consumed by anger at this time. He could allow others to insult him, but he would never allow others to insult those he cared about. Don't worry, Seal, I will torture you one by one in front of you, insulting the people you care about, and you will definitely be at the end of the line for you to witness with your own eyes. How's it going? Before Voldemort finished speaking, the smoke body that he had just formed was scattered as soon as the huge four-color beam arrived. But this time he did not continue to regroup. Instead, he started flying. You know, Shire, none of this is working for me. Voldemort's body suddenly appeared in front of Ciel's wand, and the smoke-filled body was just on the tip of Ciel's wand. You know the spell, the only spell that works. Ciel has almost been swallowed up by anger, looking at the arrogant man in front of him, Avada. The tip of Ciel's staff began to emit green light. Enough. A large hand suddenly appeared and grabbed Ciel's shoulder, interrupting Ciel's spellcasting. Dumbledore. The arrogance on Voldemort's face was gone, and instantly turned into extremely twisted anger. Dumbledore just waved his wand, and a mass of flames flew towards Voldemort. Voldemort screamed for a moment, and quickly passed through the wall and disappeared. Enough, Ciel, you've done well, enough. Dumbledore did not go after Voldemort, but patted Ciel who was frozen there. Ciel sat on the ground like a deflated balloon for a moment, and the wand he used to cherish extremely dropped at Dumbledore's feet just like that. Ciel sat on the ground, tears began to flow out uncontrollably, and eventually it turned into that Ciel hugged his legs and couldn't help crying. Dumbledore didn't say anything, just stood there quietly and accompanied Ciel. Ciel is too tired, he needs to vent this time. Chapter 45 _ the second in-depth conversation with Lao Deng. When Snape rushed in, he saw that Harry Potter was lying on the ground, Ciel was sitting on the ground crying, and Dumbledore was standing beside Ciel. On the ground. It wasn't until Dumbledore saw Snape, whose face was pale to ashes, shook his head slightly from Snape, and said with his mouth that Harry was all right. Snape then calmed down and gave a vicious look at the crying man. Charlene, who was enjoying herself, grabbed the unconscious Harry and rushed out. Okay, little Ciel, don't cry, I think we can talk somewhere else, how about that? Dumbledore said to Ciel after watching Snape disappear into the flames. Then, regardless of whether Ciel agreed or not, he grabbed Ciel's shoulder and summoned Fawkes, and after a burst of warm flames, the two appeared in the principal's office. Fawkes flapped his wings and flew back to his exclusive position. Dumbledore let Ciel sit in the chair opposite and returned to his place. Ciel slowly recovered, and gradually stopped crying. Little Ciel, are you better? Dumbledore looked at Ciel with a smile. Shire was also a little embarrassed. Looking at Dumbledore, he wiped his tears and stuck out his tongue naughty, hoping to relieve the embarrassment. After all, he had been emotionally broken in front of the principal for a long time. Don't be embarrassed, Ciel, you must know that a person's future is a very heavy burden, especially when meeting someone you care about. Even if you know that the other party will be in danger, you can't help but participate to ensure that the other party is really safe. Dumbledore looked at Charles with a smile. When Charles heard Dumbledore's words, he was taken aback and looked at Dumbledore in surprise. You know. What should I know? Dumbledore still looked at Charles with a smile. I mean, how do you say it? Do you know the future? Or what? Charles was also a little confused at this time. Hearing Ciel's words, Dumbledore smiled very happily. No, Ciel, I don't know what will happen in the future, but I'm sure you know, you are a born prophet magus, my old friend the same. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Ciel knew that Old Deng didn't know about his time travel, but Old Deng seemed to have misunderstood something, so Ciel had to explain. No, Professor Dumbledore, I didn't predict horses. Gus, I can only roughly know what will happen in the wizarding world, or more precisely, what will happen in the school in the next 7 years. As for the Muggle world, I can only roughly know something in the next 30 years, beyond which I can do nothing. Hearing Ciel's explanation, Dumbledore did not refute, but looked at Ciel with a smile. This is also a kind of talent, isn't it? Don't be nervous, Ciel, I think we should be able to have a frank and honest game. Talk, what do you think? Ciel nodded blankly. Okay, Professor, I will tell you about the future I know. No, Ciel, I'm not interested in the future, I just need to know one thing, is Voldemort dead? I want to talk to you about something else. Dumbledore looked at him with a smile. Charles, want something to drink? I think we'll be talking for a long time. Oh, of course, a glass of lemonade. Headmaster, the only thing I can say about the future is that Voldemort is indeed dead, but it didn't end well, and I don't like that ending. Charles scratched his ears, thinking about adjectives. Oh, then I think you may need my help even more. You need a part of your strength to change some bad things in the future, right? Dumbledore replied when he heard CL's words. Yes, Professor, so you know, I'm in a hurry this semester. So I have to borrow some external force. Seal replied a little embarrassedly, for fear that old Deng would turn his back on the old account. After all, strictly speaking, stealing the phoenix and the sorting hat it still violates the school rules. Although it was arranged by Lao Deng, Shatter has no evidence. Dumbledore couldn't close his mouth when he heard CL's words. Okay, that test was arranged by me, I think you should know, that's not what I want to say. Seal, before we start talking, I want to know what you think about the future of the wizarding community, or so to speak, where do you want to live after safely graduating? Quote. Hearing Dumbledore's question, Seal was a little dumbfounded. What kind of problem is this? Well, Seal understood what Lao Deng meant by simply thinking about it, but this could not make Seal give up several $100 million of happiness. Well, Professor, I think I will still live in the Muggle world after graduation, at least mainly in the Muggle world. Seal replied seriously. The answer clearly surprised Dumbledore. He looked at Seal and asked in surprise why. It's very simple, Professor, I know what will happen to the world of ordinary people in 30 years. That huge change will further compress the living conditions of wizards, and it will become more and more difficult to hide wizards, especially if there are those gangsters. Stupid purebloods who think they are superior to others. Seal replied, coldly, but realistically. Dumbledore didn't speak, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, he rubbed his brows tiredly. Can you be more specific? Seal, people often can't keep up with the development of the times when they get old. Of course, Professor, why don't you see it yourself? Charles looked at Dumbledore calmly. No, Seal, although many people slander me and like to read other people casually, but as a student of Hogwarts, Seal, I can't launch any attack on you. This is my oath as headmaster. Dang Brydor looked a little tired, but still looked at Seal sincerely. Okay, but I don't use your wand to your forehead to draw out the magic of memory. After all, I'm only a first-year student, and I can't be like you, flicking my wand to get what I want. Charles shrugged. He shrugged and spread his hands, indicating what happened to old Deng Ai. Dumbledore was obviously stunned by CL's performance. Because of CL's ability to predict, Dumbledore has been habitually treating CL as an adult. Until today, CL's collapse and CL's performance just now. It only brought Dumbledore back to reality, but it did not prevent him from laughing. Okay, I almost forgot that you're only in the first grade, little Seal, so can you tell me? Dumbledore's tears were about to come out of his laughter, and it had been a long time since no one had joked in front of him. Even if he always wanted to have a light conversation with other people. Well, let me think about it. To put it simply, Professor, in the future, because of the development of the internet, almost everyone will be a newspaper now, and everyone can become a reporter, and this newspaper has no editors, no printing. After the report is completed it can be spread all over the world in an instant, so the question is, what do you think we should do? A worldwide oblivion spell. Seal looked at Dumbledore and talked eloquently. What's more, there is a big data thing in the future world. A person's liking for communication, style, and personality can be analyzed through massive calculations, and even the future can be simply predicted. I want to teach, in isolation from the Muggle world. It's a matter of time before a century-old pure-blood wizard is exposed to the common man's sight under the various exhaustive calculations of Muggles. Charles said indifferently. Chapter 46-Apprenticeship. Dumbledore was obviously stunned when he heard CL's eloquent talk. He didn't know what the internet was or what big data was, but he understood what Seal said. The exposure of the wizarding world was only a matter of time. He had a headache, and his brows began to wrinkle again. Wait, Seal, can you tell me, if it were you, how would you deal with this crisis? Dumbledore interrupted Seal and looked at Seal. The way Dumbledore knew it was the only hope. There's nothing to do. Wizards put down their prejudices and merge into Muggle life. Hogwarts still exists, magic is still passed down, and the greatness is hidden in the city. It would be good for wizards to become secret and great beings, but this is impossible. So no way. Shah was simply analyzing it. He lowered his head and thought about it. He didn't notice the light that burst out in Lao Deng's eyes, and his expression became more and more satisfied. It was the light of hope for those who fell into the water. Why not? Dumbledore asked, following Ciel's answer. Then there is no need to say, where is the pure blood who thinks he is superior? Just like Britain a long time ago, the public has no right to vote, and is controlled by the nobles. The result is very clear, Professor. If you have time, you can look at the ordinary human history as very interesting. Ciel replied indifferently. He was already sleepy now, and the battle with Voldemort had begun to relax after he had relaxed. Dumbledore didn't speak, but lowered his head and pondered, but Ciel obviously couldn't hold on. Professor. Professor. What? Is there anything else? I'm a little sleepy. Dumbledore, who was interrupted by Ciel's thinking, did not blame Ciel, and looked at the tired, but still strong child. Dumbledore was extremely satisfied. Oh, I'm sorry Charles, the conversation was too deep, I almost forgot about the business. Dumbledore blinked mischievously at Charles, and when he heard it, Charles rolled his eyes directly at Dumbledore, very meaningful. Clearly, well, after so much spit, you actually told me it wasn't time for business. Dumbledore was slightly embarrassed by Ciel's rolling eyes, but the age of 100 made him adjust quickly. Well, Shire, I think you should know a part of it through the Sorting Hat, and you have obtained the approval of Gryffindor and successfully pulled out the sword. Logically, you should obtain the inheritance of the elements of Gryffindor. Dumbledore paused, looking at Ciel's expression. I won't be sleepy if you say this, and it felt a little funny. But you are so different in the field of wizards. Even if you learn elemental magic well, it can't change the fact that a stronger wizard can directly defeat you. Hearing Lao Deng's words, Ciel fell into contemplation. Obviously, the convenience of elemental magic allows him to use magic beyond his own range, such as the magic of the giant's grip, and polymorphism can also do it, but it is definitely not the current Cielkin if he can master it. Ciel believes that if he and Professor McGonagall both make a giant hand PK at the same time, Professor McGonagall can definitely shatter Ciel's giant's grip in an instant. Yes, Professor, I know, but you also know, Professor, I can only rely on elemental magic to quickly improve my strength. I have no choice. Ciel shook his head helplessly. Yes, Ciel, I have to say, you are very good. You have passed many tests. Whether it's the Founder's or mine, you have done it very well. Dumbledore looked at Ciel. Ciel, it was an embarrassed black question mark, but he didn't make a sound. Dumbledore continued. Charles, magic is like a mountain, and the wizard's blood magic is like the foundation of the mountain, and he drags the peaks that represent elemental magic, and you, Charles, as a natural elemental wizard, your mountain is floating in the sky, although you can occasionally use the mountain to kill the enemy, but how long has it been? Dumbledore looked at Ciel, and she believed that according to Ciel's intelligence, he must understand what he was going to say. Shah also really understood that the mountain peaks can't be drifted for a long time, and the peaks without foundations are at most a small mountain bump, not to mention that if they always hit people, maybe one day, their own mountain peaks will be shattered. Ciel shuddered with fright at his own thoughts, then looked at the old man in front of him, expecting the old man to give a solution. Dumbledore looked at Ciel to understand and looked at himself, smiled happily, and then continued, I can help you complete the wizard's foundation. If you want. How thick-skinned Ciel is. The two generations have long understood a truth. It is better to throw away his face as soon as possible. After hearing Dumbledore's words, he immediately got down on one knee and started to do a set of medieval clothes. Apprenticeship. The teacher is here, please take care of the teacher in the future. Seal knelt on one knee and looked at Dumbledore with a smile on his face, ignoring the surprise on Dumbledore's face mixed with the differences mixed with surprise. Deep description of the 3-point cool, 3-point ridicule, and 4-point plain expression in the novels of the previous life. It's a pity not to have such thick thighs. I remember it right. Loudang's family is the only one left. If you say so. Shah thought of this, his eyes had turned into the shape of money. Dumbledore could clearly see what Seal was thinking, a little amused and a little helpless. But when I think about it carefully, it seems that my original plan was to teach him personally. Seal's talent is too good, much better than Voldemort. If Seal falls, it will be enough to tie him, Grindelwald and Voldemort together. The past Shire. Let's talk about it first. I don't have much gold galleons. Dumbledore blinked mischievously, then stood up and took out a wand from his arms. Seal looked carefully, but Dumbledore didn't take it. Picking up the Elder Wand on the table, it seems that this should be Dumbledore's original wand. Dumbledore came to Seal and watched Seal's expression turn serious. Charles, I hope you will agree to a few conditions. This is the basis for me to accept you as my apprentice. Teacher, but it doesn't matter. Charles also became serious. First, Seal, I ask you to never use the 3 forbidden spells. Second, I hope you can step up and lead the future of the wizarding world when necessary. Third, Seal promised me never to fall for it, never to abandon the magic world, even if it is stupid sometimes. Fourth, Shire, if you can, please help me protect Hogwarts in the future. If you want, you can leave a legacy here. Dumbledore looked at Seal with helplessness and prayer in his eyes. The old man had lived in the mysterious magic world all his life, and the old man was still full of nostalgia for the place where he lived. Seal looked at Dumbledore. For a long time, Seal seemed to have made up his mind. I promise you, Mr. Dumbledore, do you need me to make an unbreakable oath? Dumbledore smiled comfortably when he heard Charles's words. No, Seal doesn't need it. I trust you as much as I trust myself. Then Dumbledore raised his wand and tapped Shire's shoulders and the top of his head. I, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, at Hogwarts witnessing that, by accepting Charles Lancaster as a student, I will do my best to impart the knowledge of my life, not to hide any knowledge, and to teach my students wholeheartedly. Quote. Charles continued, I, Charles Lancaster, under the witness of Hogwarts, have volunteered to be a teacher of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. From then on, I will follow the teacher to learn magic wholeheartedly, not to waste any knowledge, not to violate human ethics, to study hard, and to carry forward everything of the teacher. Quote. As soon as Shah's voice fell, he felt that a faint contract seemed to be established. There were no constraints, but it was very real. Charles stood up, looked at Dumbledore, and said very mischievously, Okay teacher, let's be honest, how much pension do you have? Chapter 47 Peace After the War. Dumbledore looked at Seal and shook his head helplessly. Although Seal was a good boy for a semester, he also forgot that it was because of the danger that Seal had to work hard, knowing that Dumbledore knew about Shah. Is definitely a naughty master. Okay, little Seal, don't think about my pension, this is the last guarantee for an old man. Dumbledore was in a good mood and made a joke with Seal. Let's get down to business. Seal, you have passed the test left by Gryffindor, and successfully inherited his sword in the Fire Elemental Magic Book, but unfortunately, the Fire Element Magic Book is not in Hogwarts, but somewhere else. So, I think your rare summer vacation is going to waste. Dumbledore looked at Charles with a smile. Seal was a little confused, the Founder's magic isn't in the school. Also, the sword is mine. Can I take it with me? Seal, who was still normal in the first half, began to gradually become vulgar. Dumbledore obviously knew Seal's mischievous character, and shook his head helplessly to deny Seal's unrealistic idea. The sword will still be put back in the sorting hat, waiting for the next inheritor. The so-called possession is only when Seal needs it. When the time came, he would definitely appear by Seal's side. After listening to this, Seal was obviously not so interested. After all, he couldn't hang a sword around his waist like the founder, pretending to be with me like the wind, and Seal was not so interested. Speaking like the wind, Seal began to think of Ravenclaw. Isn't it always with me when I know wind magic? Seal was immersed in his own world and gave him a smile. How should I put it? Dumbledore looked at Seal's laughing wretchedly, and didn't know what Seal remembered. He always felt that it was not a good thing, and he forcibly resisted the idea of giving Seal a legitimacy and began to doubt whether his decision was a bit wrong. Okay, Charles, although I don't know what you're thinking, you can let go of whatever you're thinking about. Your summer vacation has been shortened to a week. I'll pick you up after a week of summer vacation and send you to Georgia. In the face of the inheritance of Ramfindor, although I also got the inheritance, I have to admit that my magic is not as good as his. Dumbledore reluctantly stopped Seal, who was in YY. Seeing Seal gradually sobering up, Dumbledore also began to doubt whether it was predicted that Magus had the problem of being immersed in his own world, and it was not wrong, nor was his old friend who he hadn't seen in decades. After explaining some more things, Dumbledore asked Seal to go back to the dormitory to rest. After all, it was late at night. Fortunately, the whole school had nothing to do tomorrow, and Seal could have a good night's sleep. Hearing that Dumbledore was chasing people, Charles didn't say anything. He picked up Fawkes and walked to the gate with Fawkes's expression of "What are you doing?" He paused and turned to face Dumbledore, who was already his teacher. Leto said, "Teacher, Fawkes is lending me a hug. I'm almost used to sleeping with Fawkes at night." After speaking, he walked out of the door. Dumbledore looked at the closed door of the headmaster's room and smiled helplessly. I really don't know if it was the right decision to accept this little bastard as a disciple. Before Dumbledore could finish his murmuring, the door opened again, and Seal stuck his head in and said to Dumbledore, "By the way, I forgot to say it just now, teacher, if you want to go to the toilet, try your best to go for a stroll on the 8th floor where the troll sticks beat the silly Barnabas tapestry and you'll be pleasantly surprised." After speaking, Seal's head whizzed back, and he didn't care whether Dumbledore understood or not. The door slammed shut, the 8th floor. Check it out if you have time. It seems that Seal found what, but why go when you want to go to the toilet? Where do I remember there is no toilet? The words are divided into two parts. Seal is holding Fawkes, and he is not afraid of curfew or curfew. Now Seal, after a series of battles and hugging Loudang's thigh, only feels sleepy. Some people may ask why you don't hold other people's thighs, such as Voldemort, etc. Please stop making trouble, Voldemort. Not to mention that Seal knew the dream of the elemental magic hand rubbing the sky and obstructing the stars. It should be this name. If you remember it wrong, don't come to me. The pot is gone. Who wants to experience the heart-piercing carpal bone like the soul tremor? After running to the bedroom, Seal didn't even change his clothes, ignored Fawkes's dissatisfaction, and just slept with Fawkes in his arms. As for Harry and Ron, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Without a word all night, Shatter slept very sweetly. The next morning, Seal was dragged out of the bed by Hermione. Seal looked at Hermione drowsily, not understanding what this girl was doing early in the morning, and she couldn't get a good night's sleep because of her rare sleep. After experiencing who I am, where I am, and what I am doing for 3 consecutive lives, Seal was dragged by Hermione and hurried to take a shower. She didn't know what happened in the end. Harry was in a coma and was sent to the school hospital by Professor Snape, but there was no Seal. She stood at the gate of the school hospital and waited for a long time, but she did not wait for Seal. Finally, Professor Snape walked out of the gate of the school hospital and found her. Where did she stay until she told Seal to find the principal, and drove her back to the dormitory. After washing up, Seal was dragged by Hermione in the lounge and explained clearly why he suddenly changed sex this semester, and he honestly explained to him and Harry under Hermione's questioning. The scene of the group brushing the boss. When Hermione heard Voldemort, she was terrified and screamed again and again. Of course, Seal's series of preparations and plans this semester also made the little girl twinkle with stars, and Seal was also proud of it for a long time. The next few days were as comfortable as usual, and Seal also showed a naughty daily life. After watching Harry Ron with Hermione, Seal began to mix with the Gemini, and Ciel's whimsy increased. The twins' ability to do things caused Professor McGonagall's hair to be pulled down a few times. If it weren't for the end of the semester, Shire would have estimated that the college grades of the Teachers' College would all be negative. Of course, there is another problem that the Academy doesn't know why the story of Harry Shearer and Quirrell began to spread. That guy, the description is vivid and vivid. At first, I thought it was old Deng who was promoting Harry's sake, but after inquiring, I found out that it was Ron's big mouth who said it. As for the latter two facing Voldemort alone, it was Hermione who told Ron. After knowing the whole story, Seal didn't say much. After all, the little girl was very good, and she didn't ask Ron to tell Voldemort, so it ended up being a battle with Quirrell. However, Seal also had to admit that Ron was definitely a good storyteller. In the final battle, Ron relied on his brain to make up his mind, and he actually said something impressive, especially in the lounge. Seal heard that as long as he and Hermione were not around, that guy, the scene is comparable to the opening of a famous storyteller in ancient times. Finally, the day before the dinner party, our poor Harry finally woke up, and in the presence of Shire, Hermione, and Ron, Dumbledore began to flicker Harry without changing his face. Charles's mouth twitched. The Philosopher's Stone was on Dumbledore's desk, and Seal had seen it several times, and being able to tell Harry that it had been destroyed, Seal began to think that something about the White Devil in the fanfiction might be true. Chapter 48_End of School Term. Harry's luck is still good. He woke up that day and was discharged from the hospital. Thanks to the magic of magic, Harry could actually go to a dinner party at night and eat and drink some greasy food. Of course, the semester was coming to an end soon, and of course Seal was not idle. He went to Dumbledore's office many times during the day, trying to impersonate the summer vacation plan. Of course, Professor Dumbledore is well versed in the principle of confidentiality. No matter how much Seal rolls around, he doesn't tell Seal where he is going during the summer vacation, but he can't stand the rogue of Seal. In the end, he makes it clear that he will pick up Charles about a week after the summer vacation starts. Dang Bridor said that he also needed some rest and some time to check, so as not to let Voldemort leave anything behind. Charles pouted and said in his heart that Voldemort had left a lot of fun at school for a long time, you just didn't know it. Not only Voldemort, but his ancestors also left a lot of good things, and even killed a student 50 years ago. Seal didn't make it clear. From the description of the novel, the basilisk left by Slytherin didn't want to kill people. At most, he wanted to kill some small creatures as rations. Otherwise, he couldn't explain it clearly. All three attacks were astonishing. Risk. Although Old Deng never revealed where he was going to take Shire to take the adventure in the summer vacation, Shire looked at Dumbledore's hesitant face mixed with anticipation, and there was fear in the expectation. Still had the alarm bell in his heart. In the end, thanks to Ciel's efforts, he still needed a lot of preparations to go out on adventures from Dumbledore. He got a suitcase of the same style as Newt from his old teacher, and looked at Old Deng with a look on his face. Looking at himself helplessly, Ciel was also a little embarrassed. Finally, when Ciel walked out the door, looking at Dumbledore who was rubbing his brows, Ciel still said very sincerely, "Teacher, trust me, you should arrange it. From now on, you can order a variety of mandrakes. It's better to be mature before the next semester starts." Dumbledore looked at Ciel who was standing at the door, and finally smiled, "Is this a prophecy?" "No, just a very kind reminder. Prophecies aren't set in stone, are they?" Charles shrugged and looked at his teacher. Hearing Ciel's words, Dumbledore's frown finally loosened, and a smile appeared on his face. "Yes, the future is not static." Ciel can feel that the strong and confident old principal is back. "How do you feel a few days ago? It's a bit like a little girl who has been broken up but still loves a scumbag." Ciel hurriedly shook his head to drive away this terrifying thought. Looking at his teacher's beard, which was almost a meter long, Ciel decided to run away quickly, so that he would not be beaten for his wild thoughts sooner or later. So Seal didn't say anything anymore, took out his strength to breastfeed, took the suitcase he just got, and ran out of the office in a hurry. It's strange to say that since Seal apprenticed to Principal Dumbledore, no matter what the password is, Seal can always guess right at once, which makes Seal look back at the stone sculpture slowly closing the entrance with some doubts. Then he shook his head. What did he compare to a sculpture? Then, without looking back, Seal went to the dormitory and started experimenting with his new box, even though it looked worn. Of course, what Seal doesn't know is that in Hogwarts, he is the only one who can enter the principal's office without a password. Even if Seal and the stone statue at the door have a fuss, as long as the stone statue is in a good mood, he can give it to him. Seal opened the door. Seal's earth element magic was quite powerful, but it was a pity that Seal didn't know it. Leaving aside the Hogwarts statue for the time being, it is said that after Seal rushed to the dormitory, he went straight to the box adventure. Anyway, Seal is sure, this suitcase is not the same style as Newt at all. This is definitely the original Newt version. Seal swears by the large pile of animal feces in front of him. Helpless, Charles finally went to the kitchen, and while enjoying the feeding service of the elf, he asked the elf to clean it up, and then found time to send it back to his bedroom. When Seal was holding a lot of his favorite Chinese food and sighed that he was still the simple Chinese stomach, he happened to meet Harry, who had just been discharged from the hospital, and two little ones. Since few people hadn't eaten, Seal generously expressed that he could share it, and then, under Seal's eyes, a few people devoured the food that Seal had to hold to take away. Looking at it, Charles began to wonder if he could still eat such a dinner party. He thought he could save some for the train tomorrow. It seems that he would bring some back to the dinner tonight. When the trio were lying on the grass by the Black Lake with their full stomachs like Seal, Seal first congratulated Harry who had recovered, and then asked the group what plans they had this afternoon. When several people all said that they just wanted to rest and didn't want to have fun, Seal decided to take them to experience what relaxation is. Anyway, when Harry was in the hospital, Seal did all the naughty things, and he was not afraid to do more. So under Seal's plan, and with the three boys of Seal sitting comfortably in the sink in the prefect's bathroom, even Hermione Seal tried to send him into the female prefect's bathroom. Seeing the two people beside them sighing that they were really comfortable, Seal resolutely flicked the two of them. Under Seal's flickering, the three of them made a blood alliance and vowed that as long as they reached their age, they would definitely compete for the prefect position. As long as one of the three succeeded, then the other two can enjoy the prefect bathroom unconditionally. Seeing Harry and Ron looking at him excitedly, Seal knew that he had definitely succeeded in deceiving him, and that he could come in righteously after Ron became a prefect. Thinking of this, Charles is still a little proud. In the end, a few people returned to the Gryffindor lounge before the dinner began. Seal looked at Hermione, whose face was flushed. Hearing it, Hermione felt embarrassed and could only push Seal away again and again. Of course, the good mood of Harry and Ron and Hermione still disappeared into the auditorium. Looking at the dazzling green and silver decoration of the auditorium, accompanied by the loud mockery of our Master Malfoy, several people were very depressed having achieved the position of Gryffindor, especially Hermione. She felt that if it weren't for the 200 points deducted by several people, the decoration tonight would definitely not be that dazzling green. Of course, Seal, who knew the ending, did not have the embarrassed expression written on his face like the trio did. Seal, who was still in a good mood, calmly took out the bag that had been prepared and waited for the dinner. Start eating and taking. Seal, who is well versed in the way of banquets, said that eating and taking is the most basic respect for banquets. Chapter 49 _ Breaking News at Dinner. When all the students sat down obediently, Professor McGonagall knocked on the cup, and the students were all quiet, watching the teacher's seat waiting for the headmaster to speak, especially Slytherin. The color of happiness was beyond words. Malfoy's chin almost lifted to the sky. Dumbledore stood up slowly, looking at the youthful youth below. He was very happy. Another year has passed, and now it's time for the Academy Cup, so the scores of the various schools are as follows. 4th place, Gryffindor, 262 points. There was sparse applause from the audience, and the trio bowed their heads in shame, especially Hermione. The little girl was about to cry. Contrasted with Malfoy, with a satisfied smile on his lips, feeling great beating Harry at the house cup. But Seal is normal. He remembers old Deng's partiality. Looking at Malfoy's provocative smile, Seal wiped the tears from the corners of his mouth and gave Malfoy a friendly smile. It was really friendly, looking forward to Malfoy's expression when Dumbledore was eccentric. As for now, let the children immerse themselves in happiness for a while longer. Third place, Hufflepuff 352 points. Dumbledore continued, and there was still a burst of applause from the audience. After all, he didn't win first, and the little Badgers were not very interested, but the applause was obviously higher than that of Gryffindor. Much warmer. Second place, Ravenclaw. Their score is 426 points. There were cheers from Eagle Academy, and Ravenclaw was very happy to mention the second place. First place, Slytherin, 472 points. As soon as Dumbledore finished speaking, Snake House's own applause and cheers and screams almost lifted the ceiling of the auditorium. Our young Master Malfoy also specially he made an extremely provocative gesture at the four of Seal, and Ron Harry blushed with anger, and Hermione even had tears in her eyes, and she was about to cry and pull out her wand and shoot at Malfoy. Yes, great, Slytherin House. Dumbledore interrupted the Slytherin cheers, but I think we've got some recent events to count. I've got some points left at the end. Reward. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Slytherin's cheers stopped abruptly, and he looked at the old headmaster in surprise. Come. Seal straightened his body, ready to give a good response to our Mr. Malfoy later. First of all, our Miss Hermione Granger, when her companion was in deep danger, she calmly used her ingenuity to help her companion get through the difficulty. I will reward her with 50 points for this. As soon as Dumbledore's voice fell, Gryffindor burst into a huge cheer, and Hermione finally showed a smile with less aggrieved tears in her eyes. Seal applauded and congratulated Hermione. I have to say, Hermione looked very good at this time. Secondly, it's our Mr. Ron Weasley, who has shown his superb chess skills and sacrificed himself with a spirit of fearlessness, for which I'll reward him with 50 points. Ron's face flushed with excitement when he heard Dumbledore's words, and the twins hugged each other amid Gryffindor's screams and applause, pointing to Ron and loudly introducing, "That's my brother. That's my brother." Then next is Harry Potter. In recognition of his boldness and courage to face a powerful enemy, I will reward him with 60 points. The cheers were about to overturn the auditorium room again, and Gryffindor was very close to Ravenclaw all at once. Everyone knows that this is Dumbledore's extra points for the adventures of Seal a few days ago, but they know that there is one more person. Where is Seal still sitting? Of course, and my apprentice, Charles Lancaster, who has done his best to help his friends in the past year. No matter how dangerous, he always relies on his ingenuity to avoid danger. For this reason I'll reward him with 60 points. After Dumbledore finished speaking, the hall was instantly quiet, and even the teacher's chair looked at Dumbledore in surprise. The students didn't dare to speak. If Dumbledore was talking about apprentices, not students. The people around Seal, including the trio, looked at Seal in astonishment, and even they didn't know when Seal became Dumbledore's teacher. Seal didn't care so much, stood up very gracefully, bowed very gentlemanly to our young Master Malfoy, and then viciously raised two middle fingers. Ignoring Malfoy's blackened face at all. Dumbledore did not have any explanation, and continued, there are many kinds of courage. We need courage to deal with enemies, but we need courage to deal with friends. For this, I will add 15 points to Neville Longbottom. After Dumbledore said it, the students who were surprised by the news just now reacted, especially the Gemini, who responded the fastest. We beat Slytherin. We beat Slytherin. The twins began to cheer happily. Driven by the twins, the little lions woke up like a dream and joined the celebration. After all, this was the first time they won the Academy Cup in 7 years. Even Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw were very happy. The auditorium finally not that awkward green. Okay, since the final score has been announced, I think the decorations here should be changed. Dumbledore said happily. Then he took out the Elder Wand and waved it in the air, and the lobby slowly turned green. The decoration was replaced with Gryffindor's red and gold lions. The students were very happy, except for the Slytherins, not to mention the loss of the Academy Cup. Some of the senior pure-blooded teenagers who started to take over the family knew what Dumbledore's apprentice was watching Dumbledore at the dinner party. After interacting with Seal, the little snakes' faces darkened a bit. That night, after the dinner, countless owls began to fly from Hogwarts to all corners, and even Charles did not expect that in just one night. It seemed that the whole world knew that he was a descendant of Dumbledore. Even the next day's newspapers made the headlines. Of course, that's for another day. At this time, Seal was in the lounge holding the food that he had just packed and planned to eat tomorrow, like a wronged little daughter-in-law, accepting the 3 sessions of all Gryffindors headed by Harry, Ron and Hermione. Joint hearing. Under the constant questioning of the crowd, Seal had no choice but to tell everyone what happened this semester. Of course, he also concealed a lot of secrets. After all, whether it was Hufflepuff's magic book or Quirrell Voldemort in the back of his head is not fit for publicity now. Finally, everyone in Gryffindor spared Seal in the half-truth of Seal. In everyone's strange eyes, Seal fled back to the dormitory like a madman, and quickly hid in the hole where Dumbledore had left him. In the original Newt suitcase that came, I swore that I would never come out until the departure. As for the people in the lounge, they were still standing there dumbfounded, thinking about Seal's words in their minds. Dumbledore is so old, a lonely old man without a lover. It is not normal to accept an apprentice to inherit the family property for the end. The only one who was still awake, Hermione rolled her eyes and watched the people around her walk back to the dormitory. She began to wonder if she really entered the wrong academy, for fear that her IQ would be averaged out. Chapter 50 _ Start of Summer Vacation. Early the next morning, in a corner that Seal didn't know about, countless newspapers were sent to almost everyone in the magical world along with last night's news, Dumbledore's apprentice. This news is too explosive, and many people don't even believe it. After all, there are too many fake news about the Daily Prophet. Of course, all of this came to a conclusion when Dumbledore appeared at the Ministry of Magic for the filing of ancient rituals. Countless purebloods began to be active, and the appearance of Dumbledore's apprentices completely boiled the magic world that had been quiet for a long time. There were even quarrels between husband and wife in many families, and Seal's name was completely known to the public, but Loudang was Loudang. The newspaper only had his name and no photos. On this point, Seal gave Loudang a thumbs up. As for why the quarrel broke out, it is very simple. Dumbledore, as the current pinnacle of the wizarding world, no matter how powerful he is, he will grow old and only appear as an absolute sound. Many purebloods do not think Dumbledore is a trouble, because no matter how strong he is, he will grow old. No matter how powerful Old Dang is, he must not be able to survive the continuation of these pure-blooded families. But the appearance of Seal is different. As the heir of Dumbledore, let alone the inheritance of the wealth of the Old Dang family, the ability of the Old Dang alone is a headache for some people. If Loudang died today, then the existence of Seal would not create such an impression, but it was because Loudang was still alive, under the protection of his wings. Even if Seal was finished, his future achievements would be expected. This makes many pure blood waiting for Loudang to die more depressed. Of course, Seal, who was lying on the bed at this time, didn't know about these things. Even if he knew, Seal wouldn't care. On the premise that no one knew his appearance, the name of Seal was too common. Today is the day when Seal came home. Seal woke up early in the morning. Looking at the suitcase he had packed last night, Seal smiled very comfortably. He didn't dare to say anything else. It was definitely the most correct decision that Seal made in his life, at least that was what Seal thought. The little wizards started to get up one after another and packed their things. After Seal saw Hermione and his 2 useless men in the lounge, the 4 went to the lobby together to eat the last breakfast of the semester. Then, when it was nearly 9 o'clock, the little wizards began to line up and walked towards the station. It's finally time to go home. I miss the burger shop on the corner so much, can Hermione go back and let's go eat? Seal looked very excited. After all, after a hard semester, he was finally able to go home. Seal has already started. I miss my little house and my little bed. Of course, I miss it very much too. Hermione's face was a little strange. If you can still go together. Hermione muttered softly. The excited Seal didn't hear what Hermione was saying, but when he saw that Hermione's face was a little strange, Seal stepped forward to comfort him. Hey, don't think about what Professor McGonagall said yesterday, although you can't use magic, but anyway, I can still read books to make potions, and tell you secretly, I got a lot of advanced potion books from my teacher. Quote. Seal simply thought that Hermione was annoyed by not being able to practice magic during the holidays. It's fine, Seal, it's good to read books. Hermione's face was still a little unnatural, but thinking of Mrs. Williams' angry face at Christmas, Hermione decided not to tell Seal, at least let Seal have a happy train journey. In the end, in the hustle and bustle of the crowd, 4 people squeezed onto the train, still in the box near the rear of the car, and they hurriedly put their luggage on the luggage rack. Elsa looked at the trio in awe. Of course, after a while, Seal was punished by Hermione's 2 fingers. He rubbed the soft flesh around his waist. Seal looked at Hermione with some doubts about life, and wondered if this song was a female engraving in DNA. Such a small loli can also use it. Finally, in the noisy sound, our Hogwarts Express train began to start, and the 4 of them watched the mighty castle of Hogwarts gradually move away from them, and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. I suddenly don't want to take a vacation, Ron whispered, which immediately won Harry's applause. Hermione didn't talk, and Seal didn't care. A few people started chatting. Harry happily exchanged phone numbers with Shire and Hermione. Ron asked curiously, and finally understood how to use the phone under Harry's tireless teaching, and was very happy. In the summer vacation, he agreed to invite a few people to play at his home through Muggle methods. Several people happily agreed, but Seal didn't speak. The trio looked at Seal who didn't speak, and Ron's face slowly turned red. Seeing that Ron's face was not very good, Seal said in his heart that he still did not hide, and then he could only helplessly say that his vacation was only a week, and then he was going to be Dumbledore's assistant to complete some of the things that Old Deng explained. Ron instantly showed an expression of envy, only Hermione's face was even more strange. Finally, Hermione took her 2 useless men to the corridor and muttered for a while. After returning, the trio looked at them with sympathy. With Charles. Even Harry no longer looked envious at Seal, and Ron stepped forward and patted Seal on the shoulder solemnly, comforting him. Brother, come on. This made Seal look at a few people in confusion, not knowing what medicine they were selling in the gourd. But Seal didn't think much about it. With the fat boy's house, Happy Waters thoughts, Seal was still looking forward to his vacation. Afterwards, a few people started chatting freely. Finally, when Seal took out the food he brought yesterday and Harry invited some snacks, the happy atmosphere gradually reached a climax. Finally, near the afternoon, the train slowly stopped at King's Cross Station in London. A few people got off the train and, under the watchful eye of a skinny old conductor, lined up to pass through the platform 9 3/4 in turn to ensure that they would not cause trouble. Attention Muggles! Seal and Hermione lined up behind Harry and Ron. When Seal walked past the stone pillar, he saw Ron's face flushed in his mother's arms, and Harry followed his uncle with a low expression. Of course, Charles still saw at a glance his father and Mrs. William, who was standing beside Mr. William with a smile on his face and a murderous look in his eyes. Dangerous. Seal remembered something, and the alarm bell rang in his mind, but after a week of wandering, expecting Loudeng to find him sooner and standing at attention and getting beaten up, finally Seal compromised. Hiding behind Hermione and walking towards his mother, Seal also understood why Hermione's expression was so strange at the time. Hi, Mom, Charles greeted weakly. Then Charles felt that his ears were not his own, and Mrs. William grabbed Charles's ears and roared angrily. A whole year. Seal, you've really grown up. A whole year. There's not even a single letter. If it wasn't for little Hermione coming back at Christmas and telling us you were doing well, I would have thought you sold that old Dumbledore man. Talk about Christmas. You actually chose to stay at school. I've been looking forward to it for months." Seal looked at Mr. William helplessly. The poor Mr. William didn't have a good life because of Seal. He looked into the distance without saying a word. The Granger family next to them also felt good when they saw everything in front of them, and the noisy William family came back. Chapter 51 _ The beginning of the Shire adventure. In the end, Seal went home under his mother's nagging. Along the way, Seal's mother's nagging and complaining never stopped, saying that Seal almost doubted his life. But when Charles arrived home and showed the two of them the little box he had dug from Old Dang, our beloved Mrs. Shinch William was still amazed at the convenience of this magical little box. After the couple visited the site, Charles cautiously proposed Principal Dumbledore's summer study plan. Of course, the result was still a roar from his mother. After all, the son had just come back and was going out again. How could he be a mother? Rest assured. In the end, it was only under the double comfort of Mr. William and Seal that he reluctantly accepted this matter. Of course, it was not without a price, and Seal also paid a lot. First of all, the huge space in this small box must not be wasted by Mrs. William. After hearing about Charles's summer study plan, the able Mrs. William decided on the spot to use it for a week to equip it as a mobile refuge fortress of Charles can deal with various emergencies. Mrs. William, who is a police officer, is very familiar with this aspect. As for medical treatment, aside from the various potions of wizards, Mr. William, as the chief surgeon of a large hospital in London, is also a proper nanny. The husband and wife broke out with great enthusiasm and began to decorate Shire's small suitcase. In the end, even the Granger family also participated. Mr. Granger even wanted to put a hospital bed in it when he was looking at his teeth. It was rejected by Seal to death, which made Mr. Granger regret for a long time. Of course, the life of Charles was not so easy. As punishment for not replying to the letter for a long time, Mrs. William took Charles by her side for 3 whole days. She was never allowed to leave Mrs. William's sight except to go to the toilet and sleep. This made Charles screaming endlessly. Charles, who was good-looking in the first place, has been in the palm of Scotland Yard's hands since he was a child. Now that's it, Charles has endured the warm hospitality of uncles, aunts, girls and boys in the office for 3 days. Anyway, Charles's hair is almost every day. When there is no luck. This is not the worst. When Seal finally survived a whole day of devastation, he went home with his parents to decorate his little box. Although Seal was also enjoying it, but for 3 consecutive days the exhaustion also made Seal feel extremely tired. Finally, on the 3rd night, after Charles ended his duty to help Scotland Yard shoot a promotional film, he hugged his mother and rolled around like a spoiled child, and vowed to buy an owl tomorrow to stay at home to deliver letters to his parents. William F. Talent felt that his education had achieved its purpose and let Seal go. So on the 4th day of the holiday, Charles finally lived the salted fish holiday life of his dreams. He slept until he woke up naturally, accompanied by the happy water of the fat house. He had nothing to do to go shopping with Hermione, see novel things, and occasionally even also called Harry, although Harry's uncle hung up 9 times out of 10. But thinking about the current Harry carefully, it is estimated that he should start to be punished by Dobby. He was struggling to survive at his uncle's house. Seal suddenly felt that he was happy again, and even the experience of the previous 3 days became cute. Sure enough, the joys and sorrows of human beings are not connected, and happiness is based on the pain of others, and Seal comforted himself very much. Of course, Seal's happiness didn't last long. The morning a week later, Dumbledore knocked on the door of Seal's house. After a brief exchange with Seal's parents, the William and his wife also expressed their gratitude to their child's master. Rest assured. After the family and Dumbledore had enjoyed Mrs. William's breakfast, Charles sent a note to Hermione with the owl coffee he had just bought a few days ago, and left the owl at home so that the William and his wife could contact him. After saying goodbye to his parents, Seal set off with Dumbledore carrying the small box he had remodeled. Originally, the adventure that Charles imagined to follow Dumbledore should be the beginning of Apparition or Portkey, and at worst it should be Fawkes to open the way. But when Seal and Dumbledore in a robe appeared at Edinburgh Airport in London, Seal's face was full of Spartan expressions, and he repeatedly confirmed that the injured ticket was an ordinary ticket, and there was nothing like 9 after another 3/4 of the moth on the platform. Seal looked at Loudang beside him with a lovely expression. Our old principal, leaning on a chair in the airport waiting hall with a leisurely face, completely ignoring the people around him pointing at his long beard and weird robe, looking at the puzzled Charles, he couldn't help laughing. Don't look at me like that, Shire, you have to know that my identity is sometimes not suitable for traveling around by magical means. At this time, Muggle travel has become our best choice, especially our destination. I can't visit there as Dumbledore, you understand. Dumbledore watched Seal argue for a while, completely ignoring the 3 huge question marks that gradually rose on Seal's head. Seal also looked at Dumbledore with a bewildered expression, and his heart began to feel a little uncertain. When he saw that there was no one around, he quietly approached Dumbledore's side and asked mysteriously, "Teacher, why are you doing this?" "Mysterious, aren't we going to grab the Ministry of Magic or Gringotts in that place?" When Dumbledore heard Seal's question, he watched Seal open his mind with some amusing. He didn't talk to him. Seal looked at Dumbledore, and at first felt that this old man was not so reliable sometimes. After experiencing the ascent and landing of the plane successfully landed at Vienna International Airport. After Shire and Dumbledore walked out of the airport, looking at the exquisite small buildings in the Austrian style nearby, Shire began to have a bad feeling in his heart. Idea. Shaking his head, Seal still remembers the clip in Fantastic Beasts and Where is the Fantastic Beasts? The figure of Grindelwald appeared in Old Deng's Mirror of Eyes, which proves that Old Deng and Grindelwald never met again after the decisive battle. To sum up, it is absolutely impossible for Loudang to bring himself to the place he thought about when he came here. Thinking of this, Seal was relieved, and then the two found a corner where no one was around. Seal grabbed Loudang's arm and disappeared into the crowd at the airport. Shut. At this time, Seal was in a forest, and poor Seal was holding on to a tree and retching constantly. Seal swore that this thing is absolutely unpleasant, Aunt Rowling's description actually showing it word for word. Seal swore that he would never want to experience this thing a second time. At least I don't want to be taken with me to experience it once. Chapter 52_Dumbledore running away. Seal has been slowing down for a long time, but Dumbledore has been waiting quietly beside him, looking at Seal as if you can rest for a while, I'm definitely not in a hurry. After a long time, Seal was able to slowly forcibly suppress the desire to retire. Looking around, they were in a dense forest. In July and August, the woods were lush and sunny, scattered into strands by leaves. The wind rustled through the woods and felt the breeze, and Charlton felt much better. Of course, looking at Dumbledore's strange expression around him, Charles was not well. "Teacher," Charles gently tugged at Dumbledore's sleeve, interrupting Dumbledore's thoughts. Dumbledore looked at Seal blankly. "I'm fine, Seal. Oh yes, take this on, remember, never take it off at any time." Dumbledore took this from his arms. Pulled out a pair of earrings. The style was very simple, a golden ring hung a thin metal stick. "What is this?" Seal looked at Dumbledore with some doubts. Why should he wear earrings for himself? "A simple little object that shields magic. I asked my old friend to make it during the holidays. Seal, don't let anyone know about the future in your head, not even me." Dumbledore looked at Shaw seriously. "You." Seal is still very obedient. His life is at stake. He endured the pain obediently and took it well, not to mention the magic is magical. After taking it, Dumbledore touched 2 drops of the potion to Seal, and a brand new ear hole was formed like this. Of course, there is a reason why Dumbledore attaches so much importance to the future in Seal's head. Anyone who is in a hurry to go to the toilet and finds Ravenclaw's crown placed in a pile of toilet pots will be dumbfounded. What's more, Dumbledore also felt powerful traces of black magic on this holy relic. Fortunately, it was during the summer vacation. Dumbledore took Snape to turn over the entire school thoroughly, and found no other. The black magic item is just about to stop. Then Dumbledore went to his good friend and asked him to make this earring for Seal. He believed in Seal, but it did not mean that others also believed that the real heir of Gryffindor's fire element was nothing. Good talker. Of course, the most important thing is to guard against a two-hole socket man. You must know that he is also a good player of legilimency. Seal's future will definitely face him directly, so prepare early and feel at ease. Of course, Seal didn't know all of this, and Seal could probably guess what the earring was for, but Seal, who had been streaking without protection for so long, also looked at Dumbledore with some doubts. Dumbledore didn't explain anything. He turned around and took Seal and started walking in the woods. Dang, Shire couldn't help but ask. Teacher, this shouldn't be Nermangard, right? Seal asked weakly, beating a drum in his heart. Dumbledore looked at Seal, did not speak, just continued to walk forward silently, but the nervous expression on Dumbledore's face betrayed him. Seeing Shire's brows jumping, he didn't know what to say, so he could only follow silently. I don't know how long it took, until the sun was about to go down, and Shire finally saw a towering fortress. Although it was not as spectacular as Hogwarts, it was really not bad to be honest. Dumbledore led Seal to stop at the gate of the castle. Seal looked at the words, "For the greater good," on the stone tablet at the entrance, and pouted at Dumbledore who was standing there blankly. Teacher, do you want to go up? Seal went straight to the point. Although he was the first-generation Dark Lord, as a disciple of Lao Dang, he shouldn't have been treated strangely, or even more seriously. Seal was a little undecided, hesitating again and sighing, "Forget it, it's a disaster that can't be avoided, and whether it's a blessing or a disaster will be seen later." Seal walked up to Dumbledore with this thought in mind. "Teacher, I know that you don't want to see the one who lives above for some reason, but teacher, you can't keep running away. It's a lifetime, and if you drag it on, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Shire also persuaded Dang earnestly. "Bullito." Dumbledore's aged face showed a rare expression of struggle. He sighed softly and looked at Seal, took out 2 letters from his arms and handed them to Seal. "Charles, 2 letters, the ordinary one, please hand it over to him as soon as you meet, and the second black one, after you finish your studies. If he wants it for you, just give it to him. If you don't want to pay it back, will you bring it back?" Dumbledore looked at Charles, his voice trembling slightly, and his eyes were full of prayer. Charles looked at Dumbledore like this, sighed helplessly, agreed, and just after receiving the 2 letters, he heard a shallow apology, and then Dumbledore disappeared in front of him. Seal is really stunned now. Is it okay to leave without saying goodbye? The most powerful white magician in the world, Voldemort, who trembled when he saw it, ran away. What about the lineup? Shameless. Shaking his head, Seal understood Dumbledore's timid feeling of being close to the country, but he still decided to go see the legendary, elegant and powerful first-generation Dark Lord himself. Looking at the stone tablet in front of him with the words "For the greater good," Seal decided to say hello first, so Seal began to gather elements, preparing to give the stone tablet a minor aesthetic surgery. "Been here for quite a while." After Seal was ready, he waved his wand and directly brought a gorgeous Versailles carving to the steel, and then a fork appeared on the words, "Great," and "Interest," and then Seal waved his wand in these to the top of the word "Has changed." Seeing that beautiful Tomcat, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny and SpongeBob SquarePants appeared on an ordinary stone tablet, Charles nodded with satisfaction, and looked at the words on it carefully. "For the greater good" turned into something more interesting. Seal couldn't help but laugh. I don't know if our Mr. Grindelwald would be annoyed if he saw the steel, and he would pierce his wrist bone with a shuttle. Seal shook his head, interrupted his own thoughts, and prepared to open the door to meet the legendary first-generation Dark Lord, who was also the man who caused the World War. And there is one thing to say, Seal is curious to death about the plot of Fantastic Beasts 3, and this time I have had a rare encounter. Let's see if I can ask Chapter 53-First Meeting, Mrs. The skinned seal successfully relieved his nervousness, and carefully pushed open the gate of the castle. The dilapidated scene was caught in Ciel's eyes. Ciel walked cautiously, occasionally being scrambled by dust and cobwebs. But there is a saying that although Nurmengard has been reduced to a prison for solitary confinement of Grindelwald, it is not difficult for Charles to imagine how domineering and lively this castle was when it was glorious. Finally, when he was coughing again and again by the thick ash for the nth time, Ciel remembered that he knew magic, so he was so embarrassed that he took out his wand and swept the surroundings to clean it up. Seeing that the dust and cobwebs around him seemed to have turned into a big ball of dirt under the action of magic, and then flew out of the window with a swish, Charlton felt a lot better. Oh, I thought Dumbledore's little apprentice was a squib. After walking for so long, he thought of helping me clean it up. An old male voice came from the stairs, which startled Charles. Hearing the content, it was obvious that he had known about Ciel's arrival. It seemed that Laudang had greeted him in advance. Now Ciel is relieved and bold. Charles felt that according to the description in the original book, the relationship between Grindelwald and Dumbledore was impossible to die, and it would be over at most with a beating, and the other party would never harm him. So Ciel began to work hard, and kept running up. The faint Ciel was still looking forward to seeing this legendary dark wizard. I dare not say anything else. Grindelwald is definitely better than only in personality. Arvada's dual-socket man is much better. Also, the movie version was played by the captain, and he was good-looking, and he could play 10, but the Legend of the Three Gods later became Uncle Ba, but the good-looking can still be played, and Charles began to look forward to it. Is it the captain? Still Uncle? With enthusiasm, Ciel ran for a long time. It stands to reason that according to Ciel's speed, he should reach the top no matter what, but what is strange is that Ciel still sees the continuous stairs. Gritting his teeth, Ciel endured the pain in his leg and began to carefully walk one staircase after another. Slowly, Ciel discovered the problem. No matter how he walked, he would eventually be trapped on the 5th and 6th floors, but if Ciel went down, he could successfully go down to the 1st floor. Damn, have you encountered a ghost hitting the wall? Sha spat out a sentence in Chinese. This situation is too similar to the ghost hitting the wall in a tomb robbery novel in a previous life. Some doubtful Ciel looked around, and took away his wand. With a flick of the wand, a fluorescent light flickered and he used it successfully. Well, he was still in the magical world. Since it wasn't a ghost attacking the wall, then Ciel had a clue. Do you think it's so easy to come up? Boy, Dumbledore's letter shows your talent, the basic earth element. If you can crack it, come up. If you can't crack it, go back to school and go to school. A voice came from upstairs again. The tone was full of sarcasm. Maybe it was because he saw Ciel standing in the same place for too long, and finally he couldn't help but remind him aloud. After Ciel heard Grindelwald's prompt, he closed his eyes and carefully felt the rhythm of the elements. Indeed, there is a place on the 6th floor leading to the 7th floor where the earth elements are particularly strong, and even the elements are consciously arranged into a simple magic circle. Is working. Feeling all this, the corner of Ciel's mouth slowly smiled. Seriously, according to the current level of Ciel, it would be difficult to truly crack the test that Grindelwald set for Ciel, at least it would take a lot of time. But who is Ciel, who dared to invite Voldemort to eat the bomb? With a wretched face, Ciel opened his box decisively, took out an enlarged version of the bomb specially designed for Voldemort, and put it struttingly on the node where the elements gather, then fire, turn around, and find cover. With a loud bang and a huge hole in the wall, Ciel sneered, added a floating technique to himself, and continued to walk upstairs decisively. At this time, Grindelwald, who was staying in his room, had a very wonderful expression. Although Dumbledore often wrote to himself about some things that happened at the school, although he never replied to the letter, he saw that the recent letters were filled with summer. There was also a child named Harry, and Grindelwald thought he knew something about Ciel. But when I felt the way of breaking the game, I still felt absurd for a moment. It was like two martial arts masters were fighting on the roof. To add that the times of adults have changed. Not very harmful, but very insulting. Of course, Seal didn't know what Grindelwald was thinking at this time. He easily floated through the hole he blew up while carrying the suitcase, and then continued to walk upwards. The next few floors of Seal did not encounter any obstacles, and they reached the top very smoothly. After arriving at the top floor, Seal took a closer look. It may be because there are still people living there. The environment on the top floor is obviously much better than the downstairs. At least there is no dust and spider webs. It can be seen that someone is cleaning it frequently. Seal continued to walk in, and a door appeared in front of him, still with a bronze handle, and the huge door was engraved with carvings. What he had to say was very much like the door of the headmaster's room at Hogwarts. Okay, there are still couples secretly in a place where no one is around. Sure enough, Old Deng and Grindelwald still had a good time. Charles thought with some amusement. Slowly opening the door, an old man dressed in a little shabby but still meticulous appeared in Seal's line of sight. At this time, he was standing by the window with his back to Seal, and Seal could faintly see Grindwald's profile, beard trimmed meticulously, and his hair is still the big back in the movie. The overall appearance can be vaguely seen as a captain. Even if the wrinkles are covered with the old man's cheeks, it can still make him feel that this person is definitely an old handsome guy. Grindelwald elegantly turned around and looked at Seal, the disciple of the man he once loved, and he had to admit that even the well-informed Grindelwald was impressed by Seal's handsome appearance. But you can open your mouth. And this mouth didn't make Grindelwald so angry when he was born. Grindelwald self-confessed that after the failure of the revolution, he closed himself in the tower to cultivate himself. Drill the carpal bone. I saw that after Grindelwald turned around, Seal put down his suitcase, tidied his clothes formally, then took out a letter from his arms, handed it to Grindelwald and said, "First meeting, mistress, this is the A letter from the teacher to you." Chapter 54 _ The Three Forbidden Spells. Charles, who almost changed jobs. In the end, Grindelwald still compromised. He took the letter from Seal, opened it and read it slowly. Seal also stood by and waited for Grindelwald to read the letter. It's a skill that Seal has cultivated since he was a child. After a long time, Grindelwald looked up at Seal after reading the letter. "So, an elemental mage, you were scared to cry by a necromancer apprentice. You almost used Avada." Seal's face flushed instantly, and he began to quibble in annoyance. "I wasn't scared to cry. Absolutely not. I'm just too stressed, just venting. And I didn't use Avada. Too much pressure. A prophecy magus, the pressure is too high. Besides, you are an elemental mage." Grindelwald's face was still full of irony looking at Seal. Sha'ur was stunned and speechless for a while, his face was flushed and he didn't know how to quibble. This episode was definitely his black history. Damn, Old Deng actually spread the word all over the world. After going back, you must pull out a few beards to demonstrate. Looking at Seal's appearance, Grindelwald threw the letter back, and the letter was instantly eaten by flames, and it burned clean before it landed, and then Grindelwald began to touch his chin and circle around Seal. Looked up. "I'm glad you didn't listen to that young necromancer's bewitchment to use Avada, otherwise I guess you wouldn't be able to stand here. Dumbledore asked me to teach you fire element magic, and by the way, let you learn to understand black magic, but only for learning." Grindelwald looked at Sha'ur as if he were looking at something magical. "So, Mr. Grindelwald, can you tell me why you keep calling Voldemort a necromancer?" Seal looked at Grindelwald with some doubts, and finally couldn't help but ask his own doubts. "Ha, it's great, and the basic knowledge is also handed over to me. Dumbledore will be lazy," Grindelwald complained. "That is now, boy, if you ask me in front of me 30 years ago if I can beat you up, you will definitely walk around me in the future." Quote. Seal shrugged helplessly at Grindelwald's ridicule, and looked at him innocently. "I'm so small, should I know?" But suddenly Seal seemed to have reflected, and looked at Grindelwald seriously and asked his own question. "Sir, can you interrupt me? Why are you saying that Voldemort is a necromancer? I've never seen this term before." Charles was a little puzzled, and after recalling carefully, He had never seen it before, and most of it was from his previous life. Words like necromancer only appear in games and novels. Grindelwald was very satisfied with Ciel's name this time, walked to the armchair beside him, and sat down elegantly to answer Ciel's question. I think you should know that wizards are followed by elemental wizards, but not everyone has access to the elements, so a group of evil wizards who were not accepted by the elements found a particularly scary path a long time ago. Grindelwald patiently began to answer Ciel, and when he saw that Ciel was still standing, he waved a small chair opposite him and motioned for Ciel to sit down, and then said to Ciel, I have to say that the luck of the little guy is very good. The existence of the necromancer died in a war for some reasons a long time ago. It is also very good that the little guy can find some inheritance with clues. Grindelwald paused and continued. To be honest, the existence of the undead is because their research on the soul is extremely thorough, even to the point of madness. The 3 forbidden spells you are familiar with are their handwriting. That's why my old friend forbid you to use it. Then the more you use it, the more insane it will become, and it will definitely turn into their inhuman appearance in the end. Quote. I think you should have seen the appearance of that little guy named Voldemort, who can no longer be called human. Grindelwald finally complained. Ciel looked at Grindelwald in surprise, and even opened his mouth unconsciously. At this time, Ciel especially wanted to complain that he was a necromancer and an elementalist. Could there be another one later? Melee Gandalf. Is this the fucking Harry Potter world I know? Wait, technically Gryffindor is also a melee mage. Ciel felt that his worldview began to collapse again, and the good fairy tales are now starting to run wild in the direction of fantasy novels. Charles has some doubts about life. Grindelwald didn't pay any attention to Shire's surprise, but continued to tell Shire Cope, fortunately, that old bee appeared by your side on time to stop you. You must know that as a 4-element affinity, in your situation, if you really use the life-suppressing spell, then it is equivalent to betraying the elements completely. Ciel's back was covered in cold sweat for a moment, and he asked tremblingly, what will happen if I really use it? Grindelwald glanced at Ciel and replied easily, nothing will happen, you just slowly lose the ability to use any elemental magic, and then you can only follow the old path of those dark wizards and become the second. It's just Voldemort. The 3 forbidden spells are very evil, and even I don't dare to use too much magic that pollutes the soul, ha. I have to say, these necromancers are really genius. After listening to Grindelwald's words, Ciel felt rejoicing in his heart, but at the same time, he was also madly cursing the 2-hole socket man. His mother's dead. Ciel's heart will not die. Almost got caught up in that scumbag. Seeing where Ciel was secretly frightened, Grindelwald smiled lightly at the corner of his mouth, saying that he was really just as he said in the letter, timid and cautious, but occasionally relentless. He stood up and looked at Ciel, tidied up his clothes, and then said to Ciel, okay, that's all for today. I'll officially start teaching you tomorrow. I hope you won't be so boring. Then he was ready to go to his bedroom. Oh, by the way, Dumbledore said, I will give you 3 meals in the future, and the ingredients should be delivered later. You should have them in the kitchen, and you will sleep in the box at night. As for just leave the box here. After Grindelwald finished his explanation, he went into his room or cell to rest. Poor Ciel stared blankly at Grindelwald, who walked into the room. For a moment, he didn't know whether to scold old Deng or whether to scold him. Curse the man in the room. Before Ciel could really start scolding, a fire suddenly appeared beside Ciel. It was Fox. Ciel watched as Fox dragged a package several times larger than his body to the ground. Ciel and Fox looked at each other one by one, feeling quite sympathetic to each other. They were both old tool people birds. Chapter 55_True Elemental Magic. In the end, Ciel still packed the food that Fox had brought by himself, and after giving Fox a small dried fish as a thank you, Ciel still compromised, and honestly cooked dinner for the 2 of them. Get into the box early and rest. Early the next morning, Ciel was woken up by the sound of the banging. The confused Ciel walked out of the box and looked at the neatly packed Grindelwald. He really wanted to greet him warmly, but considering that the opponent could easily hammer him even without a wand, Ciel was still resolutely cowardly. After a simple wash, Seal quickly solved the breakfast problem for the two of them. When Seal handed the prepared milk and cereal to Grindelwald, the handsome old man was standing in front of the window, not knowing. Thinking about something. After hearing Seal's call, Grindelwald sat gracefully in front of the dining table, looking at the cold milk and cereal in front of him. Grindelwald's brows wrinkled unconsciously. Then he waved a hand with a relieved face, pulled out a line of beautiful flames in the air, and waved it into the milk. Suddenly, all the flames poured into the milk. A magical thing happened. The cereal in the milk, it was not charred by the flames, but the milk slowly came out of steam. Seal, who was stunned by this unique skill, didn't know where to start asking for a while. Grindelwald ignored the shocked Seal, and still ate his breakfast gracefully. After breakfast, Seal couldn't wait to get close to Grindelwald and looked at Grindelwald with a dog-licking face, as if to say, as long as you don't sell your body, you can do whatever you want. Such a Seal made Grindelwald disgusted, and he slapped Seal on the head with a slap. In an instant, countless red spots of light began to appear around Seal. After a short pause, they all rushed into Shaw in an instant. Er's body. At this moment, Seal felt as if he was standing in a big bell, and then the big bell was tolled. In a daze, Seal saw the big earth ball when he accepted the Hufflepuff inheritance last time. Under Seal's gaze, dense small red dots appeared around the earth ball, and then slowly began to seep into the small ball, and slowly the small ball began to spin. Seal could feel that the inside of the ball was filled with speeches composed of flames, slowly starting to drive the ball to rotate, and volcanoes appeared on the surface of the ball, erupting, cooling, and constantly circulating. Amazed. "Stinky boy, wake up, don't look." A voice interrupted the intoxicated Charles. It was Grindelwald. Seal looked at the old man with some dissatisfaction, but Grindelwald didn't care, watching Seal staring at himself, and looking at Seal with contempt. "I never knew you were so narcissistic. Why? Is your soul beautiful?" Seal was a little surprised to hear Grindelwald's words. "What? Soul? My soul?" Seal looked at Grindelwald with some doubts. Hearing Seal's question, Grindelwald instantly turned his head to look at Seal. His eyes were a little angry. He felt that Seal was playing with himself, but when he saw Seal, "I didn't understand what you said." Green Devo was instantly deflated again. "My old friend Dumbledore really didn't teach you anything. You are like a blank piece of paper. You don't understand anything." Grindelwald had a headache, but he still sighed when he saw Seal's inquiring eyes. Grindelwald looked at Seal and said to him, "Okay, I will officially teach you how to use elemental magic today. First, show me your earth elemental magic." When Seal heard Grindelwald's words, he grabbed his wand and began to meditate on feeling the elements. Finally, Seal felt that he had gathered enough elements, and pointed his wand to the space between the two. "The golem is coming." A silly, not very smart puppet appeared slowly from the ground, and its movements were very stiff. In short, it was okay to open and close, but don't think about the subtle operations. Seeing this scene, Grindelwald frowned and wanted to say something, but he held back when he saw that Seal was serious. Then Seal showed a lot of the earth element magic that he had taught himself, and then waited for Grindelwald anxiously. Reviews. Grindelwald was also very helpless, looking at Seal, who humbly asked for advice, rubbed his brows and said, "You are not elemental magic at all. At most you have added elements to the wizard's spells. Who taught you?" "Wrong, son of man." When Seal heard Grindelwald's words, he lowered his head in shame for a moment, and replied weakly that he was self-taught. Seal always thought that his earth element magic did not speak of entering the house, but he must have touched the threshold. He was even complacent for a long time, especially after defeating Voldemort. Seal was even more sure of his achievements, knowing that in front of the real master, what he had researched by looking at the Hufflepuff magic book was just a mistake. Hearing Seal's answer, Grindelwald also sighed helplessly and decided to teach Seal from scratch. "Charles, you have to know that there is a reason for the existence of elements as the upper-level magic of wizard magic. Those who master the elements can instantly release a wide range of elemental magic to cause damage to the enemy. The most important thing is that, except for a few particularly large ones other than magic, no spells are required. Grindelwald looked at Seal with a surprised look on his face, still a little proud in his heart, and then began to speak. Because of the fact that there is no need to chant, the launch is fast, and the suddenness is high, so elemental magic was also called war magic in ancient times. Although modern wizards can also chant incantations silently, the biggest difference between the two is in action. Grindelwald paused, stood up and started to demonstrate for Seal, only to see Grindelwald pick up a spoon on the table as a wand. Look at Seal. Some wizards' magic can indeed achieve the same effect as elemental magic, but without exception, there must be some movements to guide the magic, such as this. Grindelwald waved the spoon, and Seal saw it. This was a flaming start. A small flame flashed by on the ground. Seal turned to look at Grindelwald, somewhat surprised to know that Grindelwald was not holding a wand, but an ordinary spoon. Charles felt that his share of the surprise this year was used today. Grindelwald ignored Seal and continued, however, the essence of elemental magic is grace, and the same or even greater effect can be achieved without even moving. After speaking, Grindelwald threw the spoon on the table, put his hands in his pockets, and stood aside carelessly. Just with a glance, a huge spark appeared in the position just now, and it started to burn. Chapter 56 _ Charles's Training. Looking at the raging flames on the ground, Charles began to doubt his life. After studying for so long, what defeated Voldemort was just a joke. Grindelwald looked at where Seal doubted life, and couldn't help but laugh a little, and then said, "The biggest difference between elemental magic and wizard's magic. Do you know what it is?" Seal is completely stunned now. Is there any difference? I have learned about dogs this year, why haven't I discovered one? Grindelwald felt a lot better when he saw Seal's doubts. I couldn't cure you, a kid who thinks he's awesome. Seeing that Seal didn't answer, he just stared at himself blankly, the corner of Grindelwald's mouth slightly curved, and then he said, "Elemental magic has its own consciousness. If you control it too much, magic will fail. A smooth, rigid phenomenon. Dumbledore said that you are a prophetic magus like me, and love history, then you should know the fire I set in Paris. When it comes to this shire, I don't have any doubts. Fantastic Beasts 2 ends the war, and I have a clear family, so I quickly said, I know, but I don't know what happened after that, and the books on the market are also all over the place. If you didn't say anything, do you always tell me?" Grindelwald rolled his eyes at Seal and said to himself, "Okay, I didn't expect you, a boy with big eyebrows and big eyes, to have such a bad mind. Want to hear the story of my failure? Impossible." Grindelwald sneered and looked at Seal, and said slowly, "Okay, as long as you beat me this holiday, I'll tell you what happened next. Not only that, but I'll show you the memories of that time." Seal's eyes lit up, and he said in his heart that it's fortunate that you don't have a wand in your hand. I can still fight. If there is a wand, I can be beaten to death by you 100 times, and I made up my mind to do it for Godfrey. Effort. Seeing that Seal seemed to have misunderstood something, Grindelwald sneered, and then continued, "Looking at your appearance, you should know, so how do you think such a big flame finally attacked Newt and the others? You know me, but he left the scene at the time." Quote. Seal was also lost in thought when he heard Grindelwald's words. Indeed, Grindelwald did leave the scene in the end, but Nick led Newt and the others to defend against the blue flame dragon released by Grindelwald. There are rumors that it is Lihuo. You must know that Lihuo's characteristic is that it will actively burn up everything that can be touched. Shatter touched his chin and reasoned slowly. Bingo. That's right. But it's not right either. Grindelwald looked at Charles with some joy. It's Lihuo or not Lihuo. Do you know why? Charles asked proudly. Seal held his head and thought about it for a long time, and suddenly remembered what Grindelwald said to himself just now. Wizards can sometimes use some spells to force elemental magic. In an instant, Seal suddenly became enlightened and looked up at Grindelwald's firmness. Out his answer. Because Lihuo is fire element magic, but because of the wizard's forward drive, it often causes loss of control, so Lihuo is listed as black magic. And I remember the picture I saw. You just pointed your wand at the ground and spent a circle. There was no spell casting action at all. The flames just started, so you were using elemental magic, but because it was almost drawn with Lihuo equals sign, so it was mistaken for Lihuo. Quote. Clap clap. Grindelwald couldn't help applauding Ciel's answer, and then continued, "That's right, little guy, I really didn't use black magic at that time, because the flames I had at hand were all Lihuo. The fire element is violent and difficult to control, so it is no different from Lihuo." Quote. Hearing Grindelwald's words, Ciel's eyes lit up, and he felt the fire at will. How awesome. The force is very high, and Ciel said that he wants to learn. Seeing Ciel's glowing eyes, Grindelwald was also satisfied, stood up, patted the dust that didn't exist on his body, and walked to Ciel and stretched out his hand. Ciel was stunned again. Looking at Grindelwald, he didn't understand what he wanted. After thinking for a long time, Ciel opened his eyes wide and tried to show his cuteness, and then put his chin on Grindelwald. In Wall's outstretched palm, he looked at Grindelwald as if I was the cutest cub in the UK. Looking at Ciel's actions, Grindelwald felt that he was about to be born by an angry Buddha, and 2 Buddhas ascended to heaven, and slapped Ciel on the head with a slap in the face, and said angrily, "That old guy Dumbledore should have sent you a second letter, right? Hurry up and take it out, stop the ink, and start training in the afternoon." Ciel hugged his head and looked at Grindelwald with some grievance, then slowly took out the second black letter from his arms and handed it over. Grindelwald snatched it angrily, then opened the envelope, and actually took out a wand from it. Then just set the envelope on fire. Ciel didn't know what to do at this time. The first generation of Dark Lord, Grindelwald, who was imprisoned in Nurmengard, Dumbledore actually gave him a wand. Grindelwald sneered disdainfully when he looked at Ciel, "So afraid of me escaping? HMPH, do you think that even without a wand, this little castle can trap me? The only thing trapping me is greater interests." Quote. Hearing Grindelwald's words, Ciel looked at Grindelwald, who was pretending to be aggressive, making him slap Ciel on the head with a slap in the face. "Clean up, ready to train." Ciel is also a little aggrieved. How can he keep hitting his head? What if you were stupid? In my heart, my mother sold the batch, but on the surface, Ciel still packed up honestly. The next thing is very simple. Grindelwald spent the whole morning showing Ciel all the black magic he knew, and Ciel was really dazzled. One thing to say, Ciel thinks that Grindelwald's black magic skills are absolutely no worse than Voldemort's. The only difference may be that if Voldemort demonstrates, he will definitely drag someone as a target, while Grindelwald simply uses it against the air, and explain how to defend and what to do if you accidentally hit it. In fact, Grindelwald didn't like these black magic at all, but he was entrusted by others, and his black magic attainment was definitely much better than the old bee who sat in the office every day and sipped candy. Finally, Grindelwald's demonstration was over. Seeing Charles holding the notebook and remembering to rise, he frowned unconsciously, and couldn't help but reminded, "Remember what I said, you need to understand this, but can't be used, especially if your wizarding foundation is not well laid." After Ciel heard Grindelwald's instructions, he gave a serious thumbs up and put on a Shaoli expression, indicating that he understood, and then got up to prepare lunch for the 2 of them. For the sake of Grindelwald's hard work, I gave the old man a chicken leg at noon today. Charles thought happily. Chapter 57 _ The true beginning of the path of the elemental mage. Looking at the old man who was holding chicken drumsticks and eating sweet at noon, Ciel smiled lightly and didn't say anything. After all, Grindelwald was not a traveler, and he certainly didn't understand the meaning of muggles adding drumsticks. But looking at Grindelwald's delicious food, to be honest, Charles regretted that he didn't eat more, and touched his stomach, forget it, and cook seriously. After the 2 had a turbulent meal, Ciel and Grindelwald both slumped on the chairs holding their stomachs. "You don't dare to say anything else, kid. You will be a chef after graduation, and you will definitely be able to make money by opening a restaurant," Grindelwald exclaimed. Hearing this, Shatter got up with difficulty, like a white old man, and then complained unceremoniously, "If you can help clean up the follow-up, then I will definitely give you a free lifetime membership when I open a restaurant. Grindelwald also struggled to stand up when he heard Ciel's words, then took out his wand and waved it. The tableware and chopsticks immediately became as clean as new. Isn't this very simple, kid? Don't forget that you are a wizard. The corner of Ciel's mouth twitched, but he didn't speak. He still picked up the tableware and prepared to go back to his box to wash. Hey, boy, are you doubting magic or are you doubting me? Seeing that Ciel was still going to wash the dishes, Grindelwald asked strangely. No, I believe it, but I feel uncomfortable if I don't wash it. I don't want to accidentally use the tableware you used next time I eat. I always feel a little awkward if I don't wash it with water. Without going back, I went into the box to wash the dishes. Leaving Grindelwald alone in the wind, he sighed helplessly and shook his head. Stinky Boy is still a no-mage habit, and he has a long way to go. Of course, Ciel came out of the box after a few minutes. At this time, Ciel really wanted to say something about the eternal god of transfiguration. Yesterday, he was hand-washed. Today, on a whim, he used transfiguration to make the tableware open. Let them take a bath by themselves, although Ciel still has to stand by and control, but at least not by himself. Then the old and the young rested for a few minutes in tacit understanding, and then Grindelwald stood up suddenly. Prepare for the afternoon training, Ciel. Ciel nodded, and then followed Grindelwald to the place where he demonstrated black magic in the morning. The training in the afternoon is very simple. You can only use elemental magic. I will attack you with some low-power black magic. All you need to do is dodge and fight back. Of course, the black magic will not really attack you. I will try my best aim next to you. Grindelwald said. To be honest, if Ciel hadn't seen the corners of Grindelwald's mouth that were trying to keep straight, he would have believed it. Okay, I'll try my best. Ciel nodded and began to prepare to condense the elements. What are you doing? Grindelwald knocked Ciel to the ground with a wave of his wand. Looking at Ciel with a bewildered look on his face, Grindelwald yelled angrily, what are you doing? Shaur also felt aggrieved. What can he do? He replied aggrievedly, are you condensing the elements? Grindelwald felt a headache while covering his head, watching Ciel helplessly begin to instruct Ciel, elements are everywhere. Why do you want to condense? Don't you have the core of the elements? Grindelwald's words completely confused Ciel. What is the core of the element? I don't know. Ciel felt that he didn't understand anything after reading the Hufflepuff magic book for 1 year. In fact, I can't blame Ciel. The Hufflepuff magic book records all very advanced elemental magic treatments, which involve a lot of large magic needles, with different powers. How much weaker Tianjia is. So I have to say, it's really amazing that Ciel can spend a year to figure out a few simple 4 unlike earth element magics in these profound knowledge. But Grindelwald doesn't care what Ciel's achievements are. He only knows that he has a headache at this time, and helplessly starts teaching from scratch. The core of the element is the one that I opened for you, in your soul, with your the soul is integrated. Didn't you see it that day? I watched it narcissistically for a long time. Hearing this, Ciel felt a little embarrassed, and then he closed his eyes and began to feel it. It didn't take long for Ciel to feel the small earth with no water and only volcanoes floating in his consciousness. Ciel's consciousness touched the small earth lightly, and in an instant, Ciel opened his eyes. At this time, Ciel clearly felt that the world was different. Ciel was surrounded by elements of 4 colors. The earthy yellow earth element and the fire red fire element accounted for more than half, and they were very bright. Ciel looked around with some novelty. It's amazing that although there are many light spots, they do not block Ciel's vision at all. Simply put, what Ciel sees is still the same as us, but what he feels is different. Do you feel it? Hold on, you are an elemental mage. I ask you to maintain this state throughout the day. This should be the basis of an elemental mage. Grindelwald continued to instruct Ciel. Ciel nodded obediently, trying to maintain his current state, waiting for Grindelwald to continue teaching. Grindelwald seemed to know that Ciel was doing research on his own this year, so he said, what are you waiting for? Use magic. When Ciel heard this, he took out his wand and shouted out a giant's grip. Before the big hand came out of the ground, Seal was hit with a chestnut in the brain. Remember what I said. Elemental magic doesn't need spells. You're a magician, son of the elements. The elements you hold should be at your command. Start again. No spells. No giant's grip. I want you now get a statue out. Grindelwald began to instruct Seal angrily. Although Ciel's ignorance always made Grindelwald a little indignant, but Ciel's talent really made Grindelwald feel envious. With the teacher's guidance, Seal completed his and Dumbledore's work in an instant. The results of more than a year of research together. How long has the mind-reading magus, the most genius among his saints, been using it? 3 months. Or longer. Even Newt, who was the most talented by Dumbledore's side, heard that it took a month. But how long did it take for the little guy in front of him? It was almost done in an instant. Grindelwald was extremely surprised in his heart, but on the surface he continued to guide Seal quietly. Looking at Seal, whose face was flushed, Grindelwald continued helplessly. Let the magic move with your mind, the elements with the magic. You are a magician. Whether it is magic or elements, it should be with your thoughts, and the magician is the magician. You need to use actions to build magic patterns. A sorcerer. You are a sorcerer, Char. Hearing Grindelwald's words, Seal seemed to have figured out something in an instant. A huge hand drilled out from the ground where Ciel's wand pointed, and even the folds of the joints and skin on the hand were clearly visible. Then the giant hand flexibly compared a middle finger to the place where Ciel and Grindelwald stood. Grindelwald looked at Ciel's mouth and began to twitch again, and his temples began to beat. He tried very hard to suppress the anger in his heart. He looked at Ciel without a smile, and asked slowly, "This is what's going on in your head?" Statue. Ciel smiled embarrassedly. "Can I say this is what I imagined when I was holding it back?" Grindelwald replied calmly, and then Ciel's screams echoed in Ermengarde's castle. Chapter 58_Everyday training is a beating. Although Ciel was beaten badly in the end, but fortunately, Mr. William, a Muggle nurse, prepared a complete set of medical equipment in the box. After taking the medicine, Ciel was not a big deal, and it would be fine for at most a week. Originally thought that this matter was over, but after dinner, Grindelwald actually threw 2 bottles of potions to Ciel, and told Ciel that one bottle was for external application and the other was for oral administration. The external application is used to treat wounds. Grindelwald did not tell Ciel what the internal application was for, and Ciel did not dare to ask. Ciel was also afraid that there were some ingredients such as insects in it. It is better not to ask. After dinner, he took a sip of the potion in front of Grindelwald. I have to say that the medicine in the magical world is really convenient. Muggles need a week to heal the injury. After Ciel finished applying the potion, it was actually better than Ciel's own father's medicine. Much better. In fact, Ciel still admired Grindelwald very much in his heart. This old man actually knew a kind of magic, and the effect of the attack was like hitting him with a fist. It was painful, but not fatal. Of course, the effect was the same after the blow. Ciel decided that he must get this magic in the end. If nothing else, go back and pass it to the trio, especially Harry. When the time comes, watching Harry and Ron secretly use this magic to hit Malfoy, absolutely double the joy. Of course, Ciel's little Juju Grindelwald didn't know about it, but in the days that followed, Ciel, who started training, almost forgot about it. The reason is very simple. Ciel was almost beaten badly. Ciel never dreamed that Grindelwald's training was to constantly attack Ciel with black magic, and Ciel could only use elemental magic to fight back or defend. He was beaten almost every day. Although Grindelwald's black magic almost wiped Ciel's ear every time, and never really hit Ciel, but Ciel would be hit by an old fist magic every time. By the way, the old fist magic was created by Ciel himself. Ciel asked Grindelwald about this magic, and the result was that he told Ciel that he passed the training. Thus began the miserable days of Charles: breakfast, beating; lunch, beating; supper, and sleeping with medicine. Although he is beaten every day, Ciel can really feel his progress, and his use of elemental magic has become more and more handy. Of course, during the practice, Grindelwald also instructed Seal a lot of knowledge that he could not learn in school. I dare not say anything else. Seal felt that the simple transfiguration and magic lessons and the defense against the dark arts, he would definitely be able to grind it when he went back to school. It is not impossible to overwhelm the students of the same grade, even the senior students. Even now, when facing the first year Voldemort, Seal is at his current level, not to mention the crippled Voldemort, but at least he can draw a tie with a smile, and it will not be so stressful. In the joy of victory, I relaxed and cried. Seal's gains are not only magical gains. During the beatings, Seal and Grindelwald even began to develop a certain tacit understanding. This is even more true in daily life. They all feel that they are not apprenticing to Dumbledore, but to Grindelwald. Time flies, and Seal has been brought to Nurmengard for a month in a blink of an eye. Grindelwald very humanely decided to give Seal a 2-day vacation. He was excited to hear that Seal didn't have to be beaten for 2 whole days. It was abnormal, but before Seal was happy for long, he suddenly felt as if he had forgotten something. The great terror between life and death reminded Seal that he didn't write to his mother for a whole month. For a moment, Seal felt that he might die soon, and cold sweat spread down his back. He hurriedly rushed to Grindelwald's side and grabbed the old man. Quickly, tell me where to find the owl. It's a matter of life and life, Mr. Grindelwald. Seal was stunned by Grindelwald all at once. He bluntly said that there are no owls here. Although the management is very loose, this is a prison in name after all. How can he contact the outside world? After knowing the whole story, Grindelwald felt a little funny. After all, strictly speaking, no matter who he is, his mother is a boss who can never be defeated. Seeing Seal looking anxious, Grindelwald couldn't help but feel a little nostalgic. How long was the last time Seal was so anxious? Decades, or 100 years? Seeing that Grindelwald didn't speak, Seal became even more anxious. He kept urging, and the old man was a little helpless, so he had to say to Seal, "You can try to summon Fawkes. After all, you and Dumbledore's Oldby are the same family." The formal master and apprentice who held the apprenticeship ceremony, it stands to reason that Fawkes, who is Dumbledore's partner, is half your master, and he should feel your call. Quote. As soon as Grindelwald finished speaking, Seal hurried to the window and started yelling at Fawkes, hoping that Fawkes would hear it. The words are divided into 2 parts. Mrs. William has been preparing to write letters to Charles from time to time since the Charles family had an owl, but not long after the first letter was delivered, the owl flew back with the letter in its mouth. The helpless couple had to ask Hermione, who was a classmate of Shire. Hermione suggested writing a letter to Dumbledore after expressing that she had little knowledge. This time, the owl came back after a while, and brought back a letter. According to Dumbledore, Seal was studying in a place similar to a secret realm, so the owl could not find Seal, but he could convey it on his behalf. This time, Mrs. William was finally relieved, and often communicated with Dumbledore. After all, as her son's teacher, Mrs. William was still very concerned about the condition of Charles. It's a pity that Dumbledore was powerless. He never dared to really go to see Seal. In the end, Dumbledore had no choice but to do something that made him feel a little against his will for the rest of his life. Yes, Dumbledore lied. Every time I ask Fawkes to take a look, I only know that Seal is doing well, and other Dumbledores don't know, but he still writes to respond to the expectations of Seal's mother, and mother's love is always great. And long-winded, isn't it? At this time, Fawkes seemed to sense something, looked up at Dumbledore and let out a tweet. Dumbledore seemed to understand what Fawkes meant, and motioned for Fawkes to take a look. Fawkes nodded and disappeared into flames in the principal's office. Inside. After Fawkes left, Dumbledore stood up and went to the door on the 2nd floor, pushed open the door, and the Mirror of Arise stood in it. Chapter 59_2 Days Holiday in Shire. Seal didn't expect that after 5 minutes of calling from the window, Fawkes actually appeared in front of Seal, which made Seal overjoyed. He hugged Fawkes gently, and Seal decided to go home for the next 2 days, at least. Go back once a month, you can be beaten in installments. With the idea of death, Seal ran to Grindelwald to say goodbye. Grindelwald didn't say anything when he learned of Seal's thoughts. After he ordered to come back on time to continue training, he waved his hand for Seal to leave quickly. Of course, Seal, who had been with him for a month, knew that the old man in front of him was very arrogant and didn't say much. He just opened the box and signaled that Grindelwald would solve the problem of eating ingredients and kitchen utensils by himself in the past 2 days. There is in the box. Then he held Phoenix Fox and asked it to take him home. Fox gave a face-saving tweet and disappeared with Seal in Newmungard along with the flames. Grindelwald looked at Seal who was leaving and remembered what Dumbledore had written to him. He shook his head and sighed. At such an old age, you still have to run around for the world, it's really enough. Oh, for the greater good. Then, with a snap, he disappeared into the room of Nurmengard. After Grindelwald left, the towering castle became quiet, as if no one had ever been there. The words were divided into 2 parts. When Charles appeared at his home with Fox in his arms and accompanied by the flames, it really surprised the William and his wife who were having breakfast, especially Mrs. William. As a heroic detective, the one who appeared in the flames was shocked. In an instant, he rushed out and retrieved the fire extinguisher, ready to put out the fire. So, when the flames in front of Seal disappeared, Seal saw a very strange scene. His old father sat on the table and stared at him dumbfounded, and the fork in his hand fell on the plate. And his sturdy mother is facing herself with a fire extinguisher in her hand. The safety pin on the fire extinguisher has been pulled out by her mother. If the flame disappears later, it is estimated that she will be greeted by a meal of fire extinguishing powder. Seal looked at the scene in front of him and didn't know what to say. After thinking about it for a while, he lowered his head and asked Fox a question that hits the soul. Fox, what do you think will happen if Mom puts out the fire before we show up? Fox glanced at Seal in horror, then broke free from Seal's arms, flapped his wings and flew to the back of the sofa, saying, "You seem to have that serious illness. How could I know this kind of cerebral thrombosis that can be asked for 10 years? The questioner's eyes were fixed on Seal. This made the Seal family a little embarrassed. Mrs. William quietly put down the fire extinguisher in her hand and walked up to gently give Seal a hug, which was considered to break the embarrassing situation. Charles was very happy to introduce Fox to his parents. Although he had met once, the Muggle couple was still very curious about Fox. Especially my father. With that look, he was about to take out a scalpel to give poor Phoenix a slice for research. Only Mrs. William is still normal, happy to prepare a breakfast for Charles, not forgetting Fox. After the family had a neat breakfast, Seal also told his family about his summer vacation experience. If it weren't for the fact that there were no wizards at home, Seal would have wanted to demonstrate to his parents what he had learned. Of course, Seal omits the fact that he has been beaten and the whole body is black and blue, and the traditional Seal that adults report good news but not bad news is still deeply rooted. Fox wanted to go back after breakfast, but was stopped by Seal. Please wait, there are some things that Fox needs to hand over to Dumbledore. Fox glanced at Seal strangely, but didn't say to leave immediately. With a letter, he could eat a little more dried fish, which Fox thought was great. After eating breakfast, Seal hurried to the house, and took out the Dumbledore biography from his small bag, which Seal had been thanking for almost a month. Since last month, Dumbledore turned around and ran away in Nurmengard, and Charles felt that there was something he needed to tell his teacher. After all, Charles still liked happy endings, whether it was Sirius or Dumbledore. Well, Seal thinks it's better not to make the people around him suffer so much. Shire couldn't imagine how painful it was when Snape killed Dumbledore. Watching the movie, Shire felt that it was the second time that Snape became a master of occlumency and couldn't control his emotions. After Seal spent the morning writing the ending, he asked Fox to bring it to Dumbledore. Of course, Seal hid the appearance of the Horcrux, especially the Resurrection Stone Horcrux. Now old Deng can't stand the Resurrection Stone. Temptation. Watching Fox disappear in front of his eyes with his small book, Seal can be considered to have fulfilled a wish. The seeds have been planted, and the rest is up to Laodang. Having said that, I don't know if Laodang has discovered the crown. Seal shook his head. He didn't think much about it. He was going to pack up and go to visit Hermione for an afternoon. Just now, the William and his wife had agreed that they wanted to go to the nearby farm with the Granger family tomorrow. Talk. The words were divided. Fawkes grabbed the novel that Charles had prepared for a month and came to Dumbledore. Dumbledore was very happy to watch Fawkes return. At the same time, there was a tired and panting owl in front of him. Looking at the letter in the owl's mouth and the small book on Fawkes's lap, Dumbledore couldn't help but make a little joke. Ha ha ha, I haven't been this busy in a long time since the students were on vacation. After all, Dumbledore took 2 letters, and after feeding the poor owl a candy, he motioned it to go to the owl shed to rest before going back. Looking at the signature carefully, Dumbledore was slightly excited. The last letter with this name was almost 100 years ago. I have sent countless letters and newspapers to this name, but have never received a reply. Dumbledore sighed and slowly opened the letter with some trembling. Old B, didn't think I would send you a letter. The opening sentence made Dumbledore laugh. He really didn't expect it to be almost 100 years ago, and the first reply he received started like this. The letter did not say anything. It was just a brief description of Seal's course progress, and then he agreed to Laodang's plan, but only if Seal had to pass his test, and it was a little strange. What an extraordinary interest. Dumbledore shook his head amusingly. The unpredictable style was really too much for Seal. He carefully put away the letter, picked up the little book that Seal gave him, and opened the first page, which read, "The Biography of Dumbledore. Only this book predicts the future of the teacher. Hope the teacher is not around with pain and remorse." Dumbledore's eyes were a little red when he saw the first page. Seal seemed to know everything, but he didn't seem to know anything. Dumbledore shook his head helplessly and began to read his autobiography. The old wand is placed on a worn crown, and there is a sentence on the crown, "Knowledge is the most precious wealth of mankind." Chapter 60 _ The Happy Days of Shire and Hermione. After May 8 dinner at Hermione's house, Seal returned home contentedly, remembering the violent hug Hermione gave him when he first met the little girl, and Seal gave him a smile. Up. Brother is still the boy he used to be, lowly killer, beauty harvester. Seal thought a bit stinky, lying on the bed in a happy mood, ready to go to sleep, so as to welcome the happy trip with the Hermione family tomorrow. Having said that, without those 2 useless men as obstacles, Seal felt that he and Hermione would definitely be happier, and Seal regretted not fooling Hermione to go to Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff. Shaking his head, Seal shook this unrealistic thought out of his head. It's already happened, don't think about it too much. Seal muttered, and then fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Mr. Granger came with his family. Hermione started asking where Seal went as soon as they met, and he didn't write for a whole month, just like Harry. Seal shook his head helplessly, rubbed Hermione's head and told her to get in the car. Seeing Hermione's puffy expression, Seal was almost overwhelmed. Shaking his head amusingly, he watched both families get on Mr. William's 7-seat MVP. So he pulled Hermione with a bun face and got into the car. Fortunately, Mr. William bought the MVP. I have to say that the car was really successful, and Charles sighed a little. As soon as she got in the car and sat down, Hermione squeezed over and continued to press Charles. "Charles, you're always like this. Tell me where you are. You haven't received a letter for a whole month. God, if it weren't for Dumbledore, the professor told Aunt Lisa that you are studying in a secret realm, and Auntie is about to issue a missing person notice." Quote. Seal was a little helpless. He had no choice but to tell Hermione Dumbledore that he had found a teacher for him. He was learning some special magic. And after promising that she would find a way to teach Hermione, Hermione let Shire go. After a while, Hermione sneaked up again and asked Seal carefully if Harry was with him. Seal was stunned for a long time, but he wasn't with Harry. Although Britain is known as a corrupt country, but Charles swore that he would never bend. Hearing Seal's answer, Hermione slapped Seal with a flushed face. indicating that Seal was thinking wrong, and she was asking if Harry was studying with Seal. Hermione said that when she called Harry, she was always hung up by a man named Fat Nong. Hermione began to suspect that she had made the wrong call, and Hermione was a little puzzled after she sent Harry a letter and did not respond. Shire looked at Hermione with some amusing, "First of all, you really did not make the wrong call. That is Harry's clothes. His name is Vernon Dursley, not Fatty, and the reason for hanging up is probably that their family is extremely repel magic. I don't know why the letter didn't come back." Seal said to Hermione helplessly, "Harry is not with me, only me and the professor who taught me are there." Seeing Ciel's answer, Hermione sat back helplessly, thinking about what happened to that useless man. Seal looked at Hermione amusingly. Of course he knew what happened to Harry. It was estimated that Harry was serving dishes at home. As for the letter, it was most likely intercepted by the elf named Dobby. No idea of too much blending. Looking at Hermione's furrowed brows, Seal could only comfort Hermione. The Ron family would definitely take care of Harry. Mind at ease. This kept the little girl's brows from frowning. Seal took advantage of the victory and took out the notebook that recorded Grindelwald's dark magic. As compensation for disappearing for a month. This is the time to coax the little girl. Seal looked at Hermione, who was holding his little book, and smiled happily. He couldn't help but silently complain that Hermione was very coaxing. As long as she had new knowledge, she could coax Hermione to be happy. Not Gryffindor at all, but Ravenclaw. Seal couldn't help but wonder if the Sorting Hat had assigned the little girl the wrong house. He wondered if Hogwarts had a way to change schools, and how to face Professor McGonagall after changing schools. Before Shire could think about anything, the car had stopped. Mr. Williams said that he had reached the terminal of the voyage. "Please get off the bus and feel the beauty of nature." Seal also stopped thinking and began to drag Hermione around the farm together. One thing to say, Shire thinks that the open holiday farms in the 19th century England are still very interesting. At least in this era, someone discovered the magical creature such as alpaca. Of course, if Seal and Hermione were feeding the alpacas with carrots, Seal kept teasing the mythical beast, grass and mud horse, and then spit on his face. Seal thought this creature was still very cute. Of course, one had to ignore the drool on Ciel's face and the smiling Hermione who couldn't stand beside him. The farm really has everything. After seeing all kinds of cute animals in the morning, the two families decided to go horseback riding at the suggestion of Mr. William in the afternoon. Seal described himself as Hermione's knight. How could he not ride horses? After experiencing the fear, confusion after getting on the horse for the first time, Charles finally became familiar with the ancient gentleman's sport of horseback riding. As a knight's sword, it began to charge like a charge. Mr. William and Mr. Granger watched Seal take the lead in the charge and also joined Ciel's knights. Several men were enjoying themselves with wooden sticks in their hands. The ladies next to them shook their heads and sighed. The old man of his own is not very smart. Of course, there will always be retribution after having fun. Mr. William and Mr. Granger were okay, and it was not the first time that they knew how to protect themselves. Poor Seal, who was foolishly rushing to the front, the result was that the inner thigh of Seal was worn out after dismounting. The burning pain caused Seal to walk with his legs wide open, like a duck that was just walking, and then Seal was mercilessly ridiculed by 5 people from the family. What's even more abhorrent is that my old mother actually took out her camera and took a series of pictures of Shire's duck steps, saying that she wanted to keep it as a souvenir. Holding the bag on his head, he squatted aside and drew circles silently. No matter what happened to Shire, Hermione was still very happy anyway, especially after Mrs. William promised to give Hermione a copy of the photo after it was developed. Hermione was even happier. In addition to Seal, as the object of ridicule, Seal began to miss the potion that Grindelwald gave him to heal his wounds. Several people played until the evening. When the sun just went down, several people returned to London for dinner. On Mr. Granger's strong recommendation, the two decided to hold their own dinner at a German restaurant not far from their block. Charles remembered something while eating the sausage. At the end of the dinner, He packed a German pork knuckle, sauerkraut and a little sausage, ready to give a Grindelwald to try. If I remember correctly, the old man should be Germans. Seal muttered, carrying the vegetables, and the family returned home happily. Tomorrow, I have to go back and start studying again. Charles couldn't help but sigh.